You want me to read?
Yeah, try to hop in there again. Do you mind? Well, it doesn't cause an echo. You can mute your computer. Do you mind just running it the whole time, just so we know exactly if something's going on?
Yeah.
Girls.
Excellent.
And you want the volume on?
No, you can turn the volume off on your computer, just so it's not like an echo. I mean, because you'll probably want to hear them speaking.
Oh, okay.
So.
Yeah.
I wonder if there's a way to tell.
There absolutely is. I don't know how to do it.
Okay, cool. I bet there's a USB.
There is a USB up there. Where's Doctor?
Yeah.
Is anyone logged on, David? I'm not sure. Okay, don't worry about it. It's fine.
It doesn't look like right now. I think it's just there.
Okay.
It's just
Okay. Good morning. How are you?
Good morning.
Oh, sure. Yeah, absolutely. That's easier. It's much nicer. So take just a few minutes. The weather.
Yeah, I'm sure the weather is
Amazing.
I'm Stacia. I work at University Hill Center.
Oh, great.
Thanks for being here.
How are you?
Yeah, I like that.
That's right. How are you? Good to see you. This is Lindley, our new communications director.
Hi, Tracy Hopkins.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Thank you for sending your slides over early this morning.
Well, yes.
I was up as well.
I think it's sort of, any more the technology makes that relatively smooth, I guess.
It does, and we've already synced them all together, so we're good to go. Thank you. We're hoping for our full 26 people to show up.
Yeah, that changed pretty quick, sort of, as I guess. When we talked about that, it seemed like a lot of people sort of
Last minute.
at the last minute.
At the last minute, and we are also doing a webinar, so I've already received an email saying, I'm gonna stay home.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
So they'll log on.
Oh, okay. So, yeah, good.
Cool.
Very good. Yes.
So I guess maybe.
Mhm.
He's not answering. Okay, I figured. We need a. You have a soul. Okay.
Oh. Okay,
Oh,
that's great.
Okay, cool.
Super. So we are going.
Yes.
We actually have Lindley is going to be that person to bring this. Thank you for that.
So I was thinking I'd be, 5-10 minutes at the end of
Yeah.
it, and I know at the end of the day, there's more. Is that sort of how you guys are thinking?
Yeah.
So each speaker puts a little bit into each, and then you leave it open.
Yeah. That would be great. So Lindley will be that person for the web. Okay.
We all need that person.
So
If I could do that and speak, I would be totally fine. So thank you for doing that.
That's great. So, do you want to wait 5 minutes? And we will start focusing. Yeah.
Yes.
Hi.
Hi.
Tara.
Yes.
I was trying to place. I'm like, I should
Sure, but I'm not
sure. So.
Yes, it's been a while.
I know,
since we
it's
saw
been
each other.
fun.
You came to the office.
Yeah.
Good, very good. Yeah, how are you? I left a message, I think, Erin was here this morning.
Okay.
And that's Erin.
Okay, so she may have not been in the office.
No, we haven't been.
Okay. We can't do it here.
Because I routed a purchase request form for the register for the event today.
Oh, okay.
I don't know that ever got ready because it occurred to me last night. I woke up in the morning and I never actually.
Welcome.
Okay, so
yeah,
we'll
just
let
wanted
That's I'm sorry. That's okay.
For the Q&A.
Well, so somebody asked me yesterday.
And that's okay, we can just square it away.
Also,
So let me check, okay? So you might find voice.
Oh, great. Did you leave one yesterday? Oh, okay. Well, that's all right. Well, I'm glad you're here. We will be able to things.
I think we're gonna have to have. Yeah, I don't know.
Go through.
Welcome. You can have a seat anywhere there's an agenda. Thanks for being here.
Okay, I can send them later. Hi. Okay, let's see. This is nice. Okay, so who would you have registered to yourself?
Yes.
Okay. I don't see on here. That's okay, we'll get you figured out. So, how do we want it? You have a purchase order, right?
I can't, I think at this point I can just put it on my own board and then get reimbursed.
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely. Okay, so, why don't?
And this is after doing break or whatever.
Yes,
Catherine and her niece.
Hello. You look like so springy and it's snowing. You didn't know it was gonna snow.
Yeah.
Picked her up the other day.
I just wanna, right now.
So after we figure out all our expenses, we'll just split it out. I just want you to know where it's.
Oh, yeah.
It's on
That
my.
sounds good. And we ordered, so I ordered one from there. And it also helps cover our registration.
Registers that goes to the.
So, I mean, that's fine.
This is the internet. So.
Oh, yeah. I'm so glad you could be here today.
Celebrating spring break.
Oh, all right.
Okay, let's see if I can find it. Is this
What it's
channel
supposed to
down
be is
here?
that the moderator is supposed to answer the question by selecting that.
We can email them and tell them. Or we could just say that. I'd be happy to say that. Hello. Oh, that's a voicemail.
Everyone that's on the webinar, thank you for joining us. We are going to start in about 5 minutes due to the weather. We've got a lot of snow down here, and so we're going to take a couple more minutes before we begin. Also, if you are asking questions, thank you so much. What we plan on doing is when you ask a question, we will reserve those for the end of each presentation, and Lindley here that is running the webinar will ask your question for you. So we just wanted to let you know that we will be doing that for you, and if you have any other questions, you're welcome to ask those. We cannot respond back to you, but we want you to know that we are listening and we see your questions coming through. So, and of course, if you have any questions, you can email me. This is Erin Watwood, and I'm the one who sent you the invite. So please feel free to do that. And it's Erin@coloradoafp.org. Thank you so much.
Okay, so here's, oh, super, thank you. Good morning.
So thanks everybody for coming today on a snowy day. And this is a joint effort between the Colorado County Family Physicians and the Colorado Nurses Association. And our president of the academy has graciously agreed to my every day. And she's at this This is Dr. Candace Murdoch from Colorado, and so she'll take it away. Hello and welcome.
Yes, please. So is the camera on her?
No, I think
Great. Well, welcome. This is it's all about the teen event that we are sponsoring along with the Colorado Nurses Association. We're so glad that you traveled in this snow weather to come here. I have been participating in patient-centered medical home activities for a while now, and it has been probably, as it has been for all of you, a mixed lesson and kind of an interesting journey. But I teach in the residency program in Pueblo, as Raquel said, and I was talking with one of my residents that's graduating in August because she was off maternity leave, so she's graduating a little bit later. And she has to do a patient-centered medical home project in order to graduate. And it's one of those things that they often put off until the last minute. It can be a simple QI project, a PSA cycle. She can write an article about patient-centered medical home for the newspaper. She can do a public service project. She has a lot of options. I've given her probably 15, 16 options. I said, why don't you do this? I think about this. What about this? Nothing. So she has now decided, because she was initially born in Mexico and then went to the University of Colorado, and she's bilingual. She works in our migrant clinic, that she was going to do something with Spanish speaking patients. And I said, well, that'll be great. So of course, maybe this is not a problem for you, but for us it's huge. We have trouble getting information because we don't really have good registries. So we have to call and beg them to find the data for us. So we did that. She's going to find out how many patients we have who speak Spanish only. And this was prompted because she came out of a patient room and she was seeing a patient, and another resident said, oh, you've got to come talk with this patient. I don't speak Spanish. The visit is over. I want you to go tell them how to take their medicine. She's like, so how did the rest of the visit go? And she found out that the patient had not any idea what was said. He didn't use the blue phone that we have to use to translate. And so she had to basically start over. So that's what prompted her interest in this. And as I'm sure you're all aware, I find that with my own, at least she's about ready to graduate, but she does see that it's all about the patient. And that's what we're all here to serve, is to help the patient, to try to seduce them into being part of our team, and for us to work well together to help improve their health. So we're glad that you're here. I know when people come to these things, it's kind of like talking to the choir, but nonetheless. Our first speaker today, I've known for a while. She's just a delightful person and has been an inspiration in many ways. She works for Health Teamworks, and she worked with patient-centered medical home for a long time. She actually was a coach for us in Pueblo, and was our coach when we submitted our very first NCQA level 3 application. So it's delightful to introduce her. She is now the director of the Assistance Transformation for Health Teamworks. And because I'm not really even sure I can explain that adequately, I'm going to turn this over to her, and she's going to talk about it more. Nicole.
Testing. Testing. Usually I'm not quiet, so hopefully you can hear me. So thanks, Dr. Mervado. It was a pleasure to see you here today and have her introduce me, since I have a little bit of credibility with her since I've worked with her on patient-centered medical home. So welcome, everybody. I am the Director of Systems Transformation at Health Teamworks. I don't want to go on and on about it. I will summarize by saying I've been with Health Teamworks for 6 years. I did start out as a coach. I seem to enter organizations always at the entry level, working with patients and, you know, with direct experience, but I somehow always end up as the director. This is the third time this has happened, so it's kind of funny. This is me when I was younger, about 6 years ago, before I had a child. Now I have an 18-month-old that gets me up at 3 a.m., so I don't look like this anymore. Basically, I only have 35 minutes to talk to you about things that I could talk all day about, so I'm going to try my best to stay within 35 minutes. So one of the things I was hoping to talk to you about today was pretty much understanding the foundational principles of PCMH. I know many of you are probably familiar with those, but just to give an overview for our entire audience. Talk a little bit about effective leadership skills that we've learned at Health Teamworks that we see really help inform cultural transformation in a practice and in a system. And then talk a little bit about the relationship between leadership, culture, and teamwork. So as all of you, oops, I'm missing little graphics, but that's okay. So to the right of the arrow should be team-based care, and it's now at the bottom. But anyway, my point here was to say that the 5 functions of PCMH, now called advanced primary care and other terms at this point, are really comprehensive care, patient-centered care, coordinated care, accessible services, and quality and safety. And in our complex world now, with patients who live a lot longer, who have many more complex needs than they did 50 years ago, there is no way for one single person or even 3 people to meet all the needs of the patient and what they need. And so it's essential at this point. It used to be something where we at Health Teamworks would consider team-based care sort of one of the check-the-box things. Like, you need to do self-management, you need to do team-based care, and you need to do NCQA and all these things. But at this point, we really think that team-based care is really the first step in all the work you do. And it's actually a cultural shift more than it is a tactical shift. And I'll talk more about that in a little bit. So I myself have a compassion for all of us in healthcare at this point, and especially for healthcare leaders. We have a lot going on. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about that, because I don't want to come in here as an outside consultant and say, you need to do this, you need to do that. I think all of us are tired, we're all busy, things are constantly changing. And so I just wanted to articulate some of the things that we're seeing out there, which is one, we're all trying to survive in the fee-for-service world while the value-based payment models are coming. So some of the programs out there now are the Comprehensive Primary Care Initiative. We have other ones in the state that are coming that I'll talk a little bit more about. But essentially, we're still trying to survive with this sort of fee-for-service payment while we're trying to do things in a more comprehensive way for our patients, and that's really challenging. We also have lots of different expectations and data from payers. So we don't quite have alignment, although in Colorado we're getting a lot closer, and I'll talk about that in a few minutes. But practices are getting different types of data from different payers and different expectations to get different types of reimbursement. And there's not really one good, reliable source of cost data to be able to make informed decisions. As we all know, I don't have to tell you this, but we have poor EHR data and reporting. So 6 years after I started, I'm still saying the same thing. I'm sick of hearing myself say it. It's still hard to get reliable quality and population data. A meaningful use, I think, did propel us forward in some ways, and then with each upgrade, it seems to take us a couple steps back. So we still have lots of practices and systems, as Dr. Murbaugh said, struggling just to get basic registry data, which can be a real challenge. Again, we have more complex patients without stable funding to support all of their extra needs. And a lot of practices are going from, ownership to hospital owned, and that's a huge transition for practices and for providers. We do have really great news in Colorado, and so I wanted to highlight that. I wanted to take you down and then bring you back up. As many of you might know, and many of you may not know, the payers in Colorado are really working on alignment in a data aggregation strategy. So through the Comprehensive Primary Care Initiative, the payers have come together and made agreements on the type of measures that they want to collect as an aggregate. So going beyond, Anthem wants this, United wants this, Medicare wants this. They've agreed upon a process, and they've actually hired a vendor, Rise Health, to actually provide this data to the practices in the Comprehensive Primary Care Initiative. And so they're really testing this to see how it goes, and we hope it'll roll out into other programs and eventually statewide. So Colorado was the first state to do this out of the 7 regions in the Comprehensive Primary Care Initiative, and we think it's the first nationally. So that's great news for Colorado. We also have a lot of practice support programs coming to Colorado that are either already here or will be starting soon. And one, I see Tanya here from the foundation that I left off, I'll mention as well. But AHRQ has funded Colorado for it's actually a multi-state initiative. New Mexico and Colorado are going to work on a program where we serve about 250 practices who've never done quality improvement before, and we're going to help them with sort of QI 101 skills, sort of centering around CBD care. So that's coming. That's starting in September. We have the BC3 program generously supported by the Colorado Health Foundation, otherwise known as the Collective Impact. This program is starting very soon. We're going to be opening practice recruitment for this. And basically, we're helping practices focus on decreasing ED utilization, having better integrated and coordinated care, especially around behavioral health, and focusing on care transitions, among many other things. So that's going to be a 2-year program. As many of you know, Colorado was awarded a $65 million SIM grant, otherwise known as the Statewide Behavioral Health Integration Project. There's going to be a rolling enrollment for that starting next year with really progressive goals to get integrated behavioral health into primary care and vice versa, primary care into mental health centers to really expand our reach in Colorado. We have TCPI, which is another grant that's funded through the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Innovation. This has not been funded to us yet. This would be another very large statewide program that would really serve some primary care practices, but really try to engage the specialists in a new way. Yes, Dr. Happen. Oh no. TCPI, let me try to see if I can do it.
Transforming Clinical Practice Initiative.
Thank you, Raquel. Transforming Clinical Practice Initiative. And then, as many of you know and may have applied for from the Colorado Health Foundation, there is a team-based care technical assistance program out there that should be starting soon, which is over 3 years and supporting practices for our subject today, which is really toward better integration of team-based care. So we're excited about that as well. We plan to align with them. So lots of programs coming. The great news about these programs is that they're free services to practices, and some even have money involved, whether it's direct reimbursement or payment reform. The negative about all these programs, including NCQA, for those of you that have pursued PCMH, is that sometimes we can get tied up in checking the boxes and meeting milestones versus really innovating in our practices. As many of you know, I see people shaking their heads. So while we as practice transformation partners continue to try to refine what we do, we're trying to figure out how to continue to help move practices forward without becoming reliant on us, one, or two, just becoming thoughtful around what do we need to achieve for this program versus how do we really get to our next level of advanced primary care. So in order to achieve really advanced primary care, PCMH, team-based care, it's really what we're talking about is transformational leadership. And the challenge about transformational leadership is it takes two parts of your brain, or two parts of your body, actually. It takes your heart and your mind. And for many of us, like me as a social worker, I was trained with the heart. And so using my mind and data and all of that is a challenge for me. And vice versa, other people trained in business or clinical care can really be thinking with their mind. And so to really expand their heart can be a challenge. And I think for all of us in healthcare, this is just a constant balance because all of us lead from whatever seat we're in. It's not just formal leadership, it's every level of organization or leadership people in healthcare. So we're talking about the cultural and the tactical, and team-based care really encompasses both sides of leadership. So what we're doing right now and why we're so tired is that we're managing a lot of complex change. This is a really great thing to look closer at because it really helps you when you're thinking about transformation, make sure that you have all the aspects of complex change. So essentially what this says, since I only have 35 minutes, I could talk for an hour on just this, is that in order to achieve complex change, so really transform your practice, your system, your organization, you need 5 essential things. You need vision, you need skills, incentives, resources, and the ability to action plan. And action planning is so essential now. You have meaningful use, you have PQRS, you have NCQA, you have programs that you've joined, you have payers asking for things. So that whole alignment on where you're going is so important. And I think in various levels of school, we weren't trained on what does my system need from me? What do I need? What does my environment need? And how do I align all of that? But I think it really starts with that action plan. But essentially, as you go down the rows here, what you can see is when you're missing the vision, so when you're not able to articulate to the people who work for you where you're going, there's a lot of confusion. So people might all of a sudden check people in different ways, and the MAs are doing new tests that they used to do, and the providers are, doing new forms with the patients. But if everyone doesn't understand why and the what's in it for me and where are we going, there's a lot of confusion. Likewise, if you're missing skills, so if you're asking people to do new things, but you don't have the time often to train them on the new skills, there's a lot of anxiety. So a lot of resistance that we see in organizations, practices, systems, even at Health Teamworks, is anxiety because people don't know exactly what's expected from them, and they haven't been trained on the new way of doing things. So often resistance anxiety can appear as resistance. So it's easy to say, well, that person's just resistant. They don't want to do something. They don't want to change. When really, we might not have taken the time to really do skill building. And that's a lot of what Health Teamworks is focusing on this year, is really building internal capacity and skill building, because we know busy in practices, it's hard to sit down and create presentations and trainings and things like that. We have a whole workforce development team that's going to work on that. If you're missing incentives, and we don't mean financial incentives here only, we mean recognizing people, we mean giving people PTO time when it's appropriate. Basically just recognizing people's work. When you don't have that focus and report out and recognize people, you really have gradual change. People will do something for a while because they think you think it's important, and then when you quit focusing on it, it goes away. So that's when you see gradual change. Likewise, when there's not resources, and can anybody guess what the #1 resource problem we probably all have in this room is? Time. People said other things like sleep probably, which is also true. But time, in practices and systems in healthcare, time is so valuable. And I think taking a really fine eye to where are we spending our time, what is our focus on, what's our intention is so critical. So there can be a lot of frustration when people are asked to do things they don't have time. And finally, without an action plan, you have a lot of things start and never carry through. You see that lack of sustainability. So even looking at this chart makes me tired as a director. At Health Teamworks, we're doing all these things as well. And it's like, how do I provide direct care and do this? And, it can be tiring. And for those of us in leadership positions, we're also expected to be enthusiastic and cheerleaders. And, we can all get tired. But I think the more discipline that we apply to these things, the better off we are in the long run, and taking that time to do it. So we have a whole document about this, but I narrowed it for the talk today, which is effective leaders for change, as I mentioned before, really try to actively engage everyone in the process. And that can be frustrating because we know time is one of the hardest resources for us, but also it takes time to engage people. So it's easier to go into a room and create a policy and come out and tell people what to do because it takes less time. But then, you know, people help produce what they help create. And so really that short-term pain of investing time and engaging everyone really pays off in the long run. Helping everyone figure out how they can contribute is so important. The what's in it for me, the with them. You know, why is each role essential? Why are we asking someone to do something a different way? And how does that contribute to their life and the patient's lives? That's so critical. You know, more and more we've had to become much more transparent about data and information. When you look at healthcare in general and hospital systems, you know, 15, 20 years ago, there was really very certain channels that information and data came through, you know, very siloed. And we had to become both internally and externally much more transparent, and that can be a big culture change. I'm going to be talking a lot more about the true team approach, but we as leaders, we have to, it's like walking into any good therapy or anonymous groups. We have to admit we need help. That's the first step in any good process. And I think at this point, all of us need help, and I'm going to talk more about that. You know, one of the hardest things I think about leadership today is really trying to balance that engagement and facilitative approach with the directive approach. You know, we've seen practices sort of swing all the way to the facilitative side where they're always engaging people, but there's never decisions, you know, there's no like leadership vision. And so everyone's always engaged, but no one's really going anywhere. And on the other end of the screen, we still see people trying to do very top-down leadership, which gets a little buy-in at the beginning and then fails at the end. So to really balance, when do we engage people? What do we give them as directives? What do we engage them about? What are our non-negotiables, you know, our standard, the dreaded standardization? What's our innovation? That can be a really challenge. A real challenge. It's really about when you push and when you pull. Another challenge is walking the talk and providing visibility. You know, really being out there, doing what you say you're going to do, and being the first model to try different things is so crucial. And I think in healthcare too, I think there's some risk aversion. You know, there's fear of failure. Fear of failure in clinical training means somebody could die, you know? So we all come out thinking, you know, things really have to be a certain way to be safe. And so to move toward more innovative thinking can be a real challenge, especially accepting that things may not succeed. That can be very challenging. And to see failure as improvement, as the road to improvement can be a challenge as well, but it's crucial at this point. And then again, making that time for team meetings and reflection. Sometimes people can overdo meetings, as you all know. Who thinks they sit in too many meetings? Is it just me? So it always takes a critical eye to look at how many meetings am I in, which ones are really necessary, who needs to be at what meeting. But that time away from patient care is so crucial. As you know, when we're busy, you know, yelling at each other and in the background, why did you do this? Why did you do that? And the MAs think the providers aren't doing what they should. The providers think the front desk aren't doing what they should. So until everybody's in a room quiet and saying, okay, how could we do this differently? It's easy to get into that, you know, he said, she said, and us versus them thinking. At Health Teamworks, we've really never seen any transformation, project, program, journey work without some amount of team and reflection time. We call it a quality improvement team, that can be called others, but that time away. So team-based care can sound like one of those check-the-box things, like, okay, tactical, team-based care, done. We have more MAs, we've asked them to do more things, we're done. But really, it is cultural. It's as much cultural, if not more, especially at the beginning, that it is tactical. It starts with a change in thinking. It starts with a change in thinking about each one of your staff members and what they can contribute, seeing them as leaders. Also the patients, as Dr. Murbaugh said, really, you know, engaging patients again has become one of those buzzwords. Patient engagement, you know, patient advisory boards, patient this, patient that. But really it is about changing the relationship with the patient. It's not just that we have patients come for lunch once a month. It's that we really engage them in a regular way, in a different way, not only in their own care, but about what they need at our practice. And I think that can be a huge culture shift. I'm working with a 23 practice system in Phoenix right now, and they hired me to come in and teach them about team-based care. So we were at the kickoff meeting, and the leadership said, well, what we really need is for you to just come and give us 2 straw man what we should do, and we'll follow it. And I said, no, I'm not going to do that. So we were fighting between November and December because they really wanted to go to a much more top-down, bottom-up approach between their leadership team and the practices. So we all left over the holidays with most of the people very angry at me because my point was you need to engage your practices, your patients, your clinicians, your staff, all the different levels to get really good feedback about what team-based care means to your patient population. You know, you have a high Medicare population, you have certain resources that may or may not be working. For me to just come in as an outside person and say, go do this, that's tactical. And really what we need to focus on is culture. And we came back in January and they collected all sorts of data in December. And I'm telling you that system, with my external expertise, is creating something I could have never shut myself in a room and created. They had to look at their practices a different way, their resistant clinicians a different way, their staff members who don't care and aren't motivated. Every time I go to the system, our staff aren't motivated. No, they're not engaged. You know, they don't get it yet. They're still getting directives that they don't understand. So it's been a huge culture shift for them to engage, you know, their expertise, my expertise, and then staff and patients. They've had like 6 focus groups, and they were with patients, and they required the leaders to go there, and they've learned things they never would have learned, you know, in their nice offices over at the main building. So and so they're understanding what their practices are doing differently. So anyway, I'm really excited about that because they were really looking for tactics, and really it starts with what does my culture need, what do my patients need, what do my clinicians need, what do my staff need. Team-based care is really about what do my patients need and how do we provide it. At Health Teamworks, we have this empowerment risk stratification, these guides. And essentially what this says is that our low-risk patients, so people who basically need prevention, should really be just receiving basic outreach activities. For me, they stalked me for a mammogram for 2 years, I'm embarrassed to say, before I went to Kaiser and got one. So for people like me, you just stalk me to come in and get my regular guideline-based treatment. For medium risk people, so people with one chronic condition or risk for a chronic condition, you know, we want to make sure we're outreaching to them and they're getting in for their visits and getting their labs and results, but they don't need a lot of support. They just need reminders and they need the right information to make the right decisions. And then you have that whole high risk group of patients who have comorbidities that are uncontrolled. They may have mental health and substance abuse issues. They probably have recent ED and hospitalization. That's really where you want to target your highest level of services. So team-based care really becomes about, okay, what do we need for our low-risk patients and who can provide that? I don't think a physician needs to call me and tell me to come get a mammogram. I can get a letter from any of the people or a call. Likewise for medium risk, does it really need to be an RN who calls our patients with diabetes to come in for their visit? No. So really team-based care is about being really disciplined about what kind of, how do we know who our high-risk patients are, how do we know who our low-risk patients are, and then how do we apply the right resources and being really sort of disciplined and thoughtful about that. And then it's cultural. It's really about creating shared goals with your team. You know, where are we going? How do we know when we're going to get there? We see goals a lot that kind of fall away or aren't smart, and so at the end of a year, a team gets together and goes, well, did we accomplish that? What were our goals, and did we accomplish that? So really building those shared goals is so essential because a team really wants to feel like they're successful at the end of some sort of journey. And the journey, as we know, is never done. Clear roles. You know, I think this is also another key aspect. As we look at those low, medium, high-risk patients, how do we know who's going to do what? And have we updated their job description? And is it crystal clear, you know, when a patient comes in, who's doing what? Outside of patient care, who's doing outreach? Really making the roles really clear. And I think sometimes we can make assignments to people without updating job descriptions or making it really part of their evaluation. And as long as something's a hallway conversation, you know, it doesn't become relevant. Probably out of time. Mutual trust is another one of those cultural pieces, building that trust through team building, quality improvement teams, you know, staff meetings. Really mutual trust is about, can I say what I really think to you? Or are you telling me what that I can say something, but when I say it, you're actually mad at me. You know, it's creating that open door and that multi-directional feedback loop. So if something really isn't working, we know leadership wants to know, and vice versa. If leadership really feels like we're not doing something, we can hear the feedback. And creating that can be a real challenge. Effective communication is essential. That's essential from our marriages to our jobs to our, it's exhausting how much communication we need to do, let's be honest. And we always say, you know, communicate 7 different ways. How do you say it? 7 different ways to 7 different people or something. Essentially, you have to just keep communicating. And that can be challenging in a very busy environment. And then back to the tactical, really having those measurable processes and outcomes. And as we said earlier, one of the biggest challenges to this can be the type of data we receive. But, you know, imperfect data can't get in the way of great data. Or we can't expect perfect data before we're willing to look at measurable outcomes and processes. And so we as a state, through the Collective Impact Grant and all these other grants, are really trying to figure out the data situation for practices, both from a cost perspective and a clinical quality data. So there's a lot of work being done behind the scenes with multiple organizations to figure this out. But in the meantime, we need to use what we have. And we need to collect baseline data so we can set SMART goals and really look at outcomes. So as you can see here, it takes a lot of parts of our brain. And sometimes as leaders, we don't have all the parts of this brain. I know when I look at my management team, I tend to be much more cultural, and I have 2 very tactical managers that work for me, thank God. So I'm like, I think we should do this. I think we should do that. I'm like, how do we measure that? How do we implement it? How do we operationalize it? I'm like, really good point. So it's also admitting that we need each other. You know, that one leader can't do it all. So creating leadership teams among your staff is so crucial. So with that, I might actually be close to on time. I think I have a few minutes. Do I have a few minutes for questions? Okay. Do people have questions? Better?
I mentioned this really one of my biggest as I've watched this way struggle with this, I'm worried about the costs of stage, that really great. What's happening there? I believe in the newer guidelines of standards, there are efforts to measure culture.
So the question from the audience was about the fact that culture change is very hard to measure and it's hard to implement. And with programs like NCQA and I think other programs, it's really focused on the tactical and the check the box. And when are these programs, and specifically NCQA, going to understand what culture change is and how to measure it? I know that NCQA is going through a huge, as you guys probably got notification, after the 2014 guidelines, they're going to essentially redo how they're doing things. So we don't totally know what that means either. But I think they're getting it. I think in this last round for 2014, there was a real focus on aligning, you know, meaningful use in NCQA, because in the first round, it was like, we're doing meaningful use, we're doing NCQA, there's no alignment. So I think they're getting it over time. The real challenge, I think, for you guys as practices and systems is that, you know, we're all doing these programs in the hope that they mean something, you know, when the value-based payment model comes, and to show that we actually have commitment. You know, it's for all the right reasons. But in the meantime, I think, as you're raising, Dr. Hoffman, the challenge is that we get into the tactical, and it's hard to implement or hard to measure culture change. I think there are things outside of NCQA that there are efforts being done to measure that. Things like implementation measures, activation measures, others. But I agree with you that we at Health Teamworks, as well as NCQA and other people trying to support programs, need to continue to move toward that. Because the tactical, I think, are easy, especially for providers, because, you know, it's tangible. It's what was the data, how does it show, if you can get good data. The culture change piece is an ongoing journey, and it's a challenge. And I think we all need to continue to learn how to measure it. I'm not sure NCQA can get there as quickly as we'd like to as our renewals come up, but I know that they continue to learn and grow. And the challenge too is there's many other types of recognition programs besides NCQA, and not one has been chosen, you know. So it just continues to be a challenge, because I think everyone doing things like that are doing it all for the right reason, but it doesn't necessarily get you exactly where you want to go in the short term.
So your Health Teamworks is a facilitative consulting group, correct?
Yeah, I can talk to people about Health Teamworks at lunch, but yes, we are a nonprofit that provides practice coaching. So similar to Rocky Mountain Health Plan, there's many different ones around the state. And there's a whole transformation group that's gonna serve all those grants that I mentioned earlier. And they hope to have a website launched for that. So I can give you more information about how to apply for those different programs. Because Health Teamworks isn't gonna give a provider on each of those for every practice. There's gonna be partnerships. But yes, we provide practice coaching consultation for practices and systems.
Now, granted, I'm sure the size of the system and clinic makes a difference, but what type of charges or fees?
So the question is about, what kind of, when people are doing practice coaching and consultation, what are the fees and charges? Since we do work in other states, I can tell you that a lot of states, they pay for it. They, write a proposal, we accept it, and they pay us. In Colorado, there are so many grant-funded opportunities. So all the ones I mentioned earlier, AHRQ, SIM, the team-based care program through the Colorado Health Foundation, TCK, all those are free grant-funded practice transformation services. There's going to be open application processes. You can apply, decide which one's right for you, and then you'll be assigned a practice transformation partner. Health Teamworks are another one to help support you. So if you haven't done this work before, I really highly suggest you look into the AHRT program. That's really for practices who've never done quality improvement type of work before. The others are probably going to be targeted toward advanced practices that have done it for a while. Any questions online? Nope. Dr. Hoffman?
But later on, obviously, the issue you spoke about that, in terms of how where that is to make team-based work well. We have to use that and our training is, I wonder if that works provide specific initiative, like conditions versus practice versus to be able to learn better.
So Dr. Hoffitz's question for those online was about really clinician leadership. I would say for transformation, and team-based care is probably one of those things. And I think, as I mentioned earlier, I think, Health Teamworks and those of us that have been doing this for a while, we're really focused on us coming in and trying to help you and mentor you and support you. At this point, we're really trying to figure out how to help practices and systems do it themselves. And in our statewide residency program, we're really focusing on that in the next couple of years as well as others. And so we are really building this year, and I think other practice transformation partners are as well, targeted workforce development. And I agree with what I think you said, which is that it's a real struggle for clinician leaders to know how to do this. It wasn't part of training. You come out and the expectations change and driving culture and tactical, it's a real challenge. And so definitely, I can speak for Health Teamworks, the two foci that we're gonna have this year for workforce development is on clinician leadership and support and different role development like MAs in the new, advanced primary care world, care managers, care coordinators. So we're gonna have two different levels of focus. But I agree that focus on supporting clinicians to be different types of leaders and to adapt to all this change and continue to know how to lead is critical. So no, I don't think there's any guide you can post off on the internet and say, as a clinician leader, I've done these 10 things, so I'm doing right by my practice. Nor at Health Teamworks. I feel like my job and expectations are constantly changing. So I think we all have to learn from each other, but definitely that's something that we want to focus on, is supporting you to lead, because it's big work. I think that was good. Dr. Marbo?
Thank you very much.
Take a little bit to switch gears here. We're going to have our next speakers come up so that they can get while I chat for just a second. Having worked with Nicole in this, I was familiar with a lot of things that she said, but one of the things that I find really difficult and maybe maybe it's not as difficult for other people. But I have such a difficulty in our office with turnover. We have such huge staff turnover. And we're all like on the same boat, going in the same direction. And then we have people jump off and we're pulling the other people on. It's so hard to plug people in. I feel like we're dragging them under the water for a while. So I just think that's one of the things that the leaders need to have a good handle on and are so, then, yes. We do, and sadly, the people that work in our office, because we have a union in the clinic, in the hospital, and other practices that don't. And so as soon as they leave our office and go to another office, they get a big raise. So as soon as they get trained, they're transferred out, pretty much. So it's kind of that's the challenge. Anyway, next on the agenda are two speakers that I'm happy to introduce. Dr. John Bender is a family physician that works and established Vermont Clinic, and he is a multifaceted, multi-talented person who is not going to have near enough time to share all of the wonderful things that he does in his life. He's also running currently we're announcing and running soon for the board of directors for the American Academy of Family Physicians. And he's very active in our organization. So we are thrilled to have him here. And this young lady here is a nurse practitioner who is the nurse certified chief nursing officer at Paramount Family Medicine. And she has a lot of experience. She is an adult practice nurse, advanced practice nurse, and she has worked at least in 12 years and stuff. I read in her bio, and she's got a lot of experience working with adult patients with chronic diseases, with health issues. She's very passionate about engaging patients and helping them become excited about improving their health care. And so I'm going to turn it over to them to speak.
Well, wonderful. Thank you for the introduction. Because there's two of us, and this is a lapel mic, I think we'll just share it back and forth because this is being webcast, correct? So we have to be able to speak in the microphone as well as project. So I'm John Bender, and I am a family medicine physician. We came down from Fort Collins. We're a little delayed. You know, it's nice and I wouldn't say sunny, but it was like normal weather. And we started driving, and about Longmont, we started to see sleet, and then it was snow by Thornton, and then it was like 0 miles per hour on 270. So we apologize if we were about 20 minutes late. I hate missing Health Teamworks presentations because they are just awesome as our coaches. We've used coaching from back in the day when they were the Colorado Collaborative. I just love their presentations. Well, we've been asked to spend about 45 minutes and maybe a little bit less speaking about team-based care. And the slide deck is for me, actually, so I remember what to say. So that's why I have to stand over here and take a look. And team-based care really has 3 key components to it, but I wanted to try to sum it up. It requires all disciplines to deliver at the top of their scope. It is very disruptive, and it has the power to change the world. If we want to make healthcare accessible, affordable, and accountable, we have to do this. And for some of us, the nurse practitioner movement, physician assistant movement, or the clinical pharmacist movement, or the licensed clinical social worker, or naturopath, or everyone fill in the blank as part of the team, it can be a little bit like driving in the rearview mirror. It's like, oh my goodness, this is happening, this is changing. But I want to be a little more forward thinking about it and discuss how a strong integrated care team actually is a lot different than just adding people into co-located spaces. And so really my destiny in the world is to disrupt specialty care. They're the ones who have to look in their rearview mirror and see me coming after them. And when they complain about it, I say, look, your job is to disrupt the hospitals. And in the end of the equation, the hospitals have to downsize. They have to. That's the only way we're going to make healthcare affordable, accessible, and accountable. The hospitals do not know this yet, but it is coming. Because I've seen the future, and the future the payers win. We can't just keep paying for more and more freestanding emergency rooms. That's not how it's going to work. So I actually, let me go back. I just realized I put this a little bit out of order. Let me tell you a little bit about Miramont first. So we have tried to add new services for many different years. We, in 2002, added a female provider. This was a physician assistant. I started doing bone mineral density testing. We then went to a level 2 laboratory, and this is now entangled us to where we now have had med techs on staff. We have a pathologist that we pay to review labs. We do IV therapy. We started having visiting specialists where they would pay us rent, come in, see our patients for a couple of times a week. We expanded our hours, and that required adding more people, a lot of part-time people actually. It's difficult to ask a provider who's already been there 8 hours to stay 3 more hours and work the night shift, but I can easily grab someone who works somewhere else and ask them to come moonlight for 3 hours. I don't know why that is psychologically. People just like a new set of problems, but it required us to be able to do that. We added physical therapy, psychotherapy, later full psychologists, nurse educators, initially RN level and later APN, female physician. Our dispensary brought pharmacy technicians. They practice under my license. We have psychologists. We achieved our patient-centered medical home status in 2009, level 3 NCQA, and then we reattested that last year. We do allergy testing, allergy immunotherapy, digital mammography, mammotechs, audiologists, pediatrician, phage aesthetics. In 2012, we launched an Medtronic insulin pump program. I've now referred to an endocrinologist for 4 years. If they're DKA, they've been to the hospital, if they were to attend a pump, and I just did not have reason to use endocrinology. In 2014, we added our clinical pharmacist. This has been really cool. Not certain that they're making money for Shed in a sustainable way, but we have maybe figured out as well as anyone, and we're really looking forward to. There are just some questions I can never get answered that I can go to her now. Dr. Azari, she gets that answer for us. We have a social worker, a bariatrics physician, have an acupuncturist, and in 2015 we actually moved into the ACO world and we're launching a direct primary care product. So the reason I gave you that overview is to understand that yes, Julie is a nurse practitioner, I'm a physician, but we have a lot of team members here, and so that makes for a big team. So let's go back and look at a typical Miramont patient. This is someone that Julie and I see together, and I apologize for the HIPAA violations here. Eric Bull, the state privacy officer from Miramont, I apologize. I hope you fine. You will all need to sign the behavioral health one of those PDA agreements at the end. But anyway, this is a real person. But I just wanted to show what a chart or a visit note log might look like. Now it's a little small print, but what we see here. Is this a lazy? Oh yeah, this okay. So we have Julie Deutsch. Julie Deutsch. This is Julie. You see, this is John Bender. This is Dr. Azari. She's our clinical pharmacist. There's Bender. There's Deutsch. There's Azari. Birmingham is our social worker. Lowther is one of my call partners. Quinville's a PA. And so you start looking at this, you go, "Oh, that looks pretty fragmented. You got too many people seeing this person." But if you ask the patient himself, that is not their experience at all. If you asked him, if you asked Jerry, "Who's your doctor?" He'd say John Bender. He'd say John Bender has been my doctor for 12 years. Well, who are all these other people? Well, Jerry's a really sick man. And so when his diabetes is out of control, I consult my nurse practitioner, Julie Peters, because she's running the Medtronic insulin pump program. I don't send an endocrinologist, but I rely on my nurse practitioner to do that. She knows more about the Medtronic pump than I do, and she's willing to manage it because the people in that program, they get called, they call on weekends and stuff, and I don't know, on-call doctor telling how to adjust the pump. I want the nurse practitioner runs that program to tell them how to adjust the pump. Ray is my PA. He works after hours. I don't work 24/7. There are some times I take off. And so when Jerry gets sick, after hours, he comes in, he sees my PA. I occasionally take vacation. If I'm out of town, one of my partners, Kelly Rockwood, will see that patient. Dr. Azari is a clinical pharmacist. This is a 20+ meds guy. He's on a lot of meds. And so Dr. Azari is consulted. She goes through the meds. She finds out what drug interactions might be happening. She also is looking for cost control. There are things that we can substitute out and make for better care. And then finally, Jerry, unfortunately, did end up in the hospital. He ended up in a nursing home a couple times. He's still in a rehab bed. And Julie is my sniffist. She goes to the hospital. She goes to skilled nursing, and she basically takes care of him in that environment. And so, do you want to visit? I'm going to turn the mic over.
I'll probably just hold it, yeah. A little strange. Thank you, Dr. Bender. I think the important pieces for us to talk about, and we are going to talk a little bit more about the nurse-physician relationship and how that looks different in a primary care setting than it does in a hospital setting. And I agree with Dr. Bender that our job is to disrupt what's actually happening right now in our healthcare system, because it's not working. I just had the great opportunity to go to the IHI conference. The most amazing piece to that was that it was an international summit. There were groups there from Australia, from Canada, from all over the country, and talking about the challenges that there are even in the one-payer system. And so even though we're in the midst of a lot of changes, if we don't figure out how to efficiently not only care for patients in primary care settings, but also accurately document and track that information, we're not going to be any better, off once we maybe do convert to a one-payer system, and we don't even know if that's going to happen. But the most important piece that I think we need to address today is how do we overcome some of the stigmas that both nursing and physicians have that with each other. And I think the most incredible part about working with Miramont for me is that I do practice autonomously. However, I understand what my practice limitations are, and I understand that I always have a physician there that I'm able to go to when there are difficult situations. And, Mr. Strimmel here is probably the best example of knowing that we are providing inclusive, holistic care for each person, that each person is practicing at their level of expertise. And really the bottom line is improve access for patients. And so I really encourage everybody, and what we continuously try to work on, it's not that we have overcome completely any of our maybe little turfing wars that we have between nursing and physicians. I mean, we don't have any of that.
She occasionally changes my orders.
But then he forgets and we just change it back again, and so it's okay. Or we go to Congress together and testify against each other on certain things, but,
Congress is federal level, that was a House committee.
It was a Senate committee. It was a Senate committee. It was not Congress. It sounds better, though. I'd like to say it was Congress. Don't embellish. All right. So, yes, there are still all of the same things that are there, but I think the important piece is that when we focus on the patient and their experience and how do we really improve access, and the only way, we can't duplicate Dr. Bender, kind of. We're going to have Bender robots that will be at every facility, and so we are working on that, but we can't duplicate ourselves, and we are in the midst of a crisis when it comes to being able to meet the needs of the extending population of insured individuals. And so I am really hopeful that we can work together as a team to understand that we've got to get past some of those old schooler looking in the rearview mirror type of behaviors. So I feel really grateful for that.
Thank you. I wanted to give another little vignette just kind of on scope and practicing at the top of scope. Typically, new technologies empower people who aren't usually able to do something to now do something. I mean, a good example is in the 1950s, if any of us would have walked up to a mainframe computer and started touching it, we probably would have been arrested. I mean, people just didn't do that unless you have like a doctorate level computer science degree. And now, my 4-year-old grandsons play with iPads and no one worries about it, no worry that they're gonna break the internet or something like that. So as the technology changes, it empowers people who might have less training or less experience to be able to do more. Another good example, if you think back to the 1980s, ulcer surgery was the most common surgery performed in the US. And today it's almost unheard of because we had medicines like proton pump inhibitors invented that just wiped out the majority of the disease. And when they first came out, I remember at Creighton University as a medical student, only the gastroenterologist could write for the Prilosec, and you had to have a consult, and the gastroenterologist had to come, and then they look and go, yeah, we think they're a good candidate, start at 20 milligrams daily. And it was a big deal. And then family physician, now it's like the consumer can buy it over the counter, you don't even need a doctor order. And I looked at the future, how soon till, the brain surgery app comes out, and we'll have nurse practitioners saying, we want to use brain surgery. Oh no, you have to be a neurosurgeon. And then family physicians say, well, we've been using it for the last year, and we're doing okay, we have good outcomes now. I mean, we have to think about as the technologies come out, it does change the playing field, and that doesn't mean that we should be scared. This is what we want as a society, is what we want as human beings, is to make our life healthier and happier. And so we need to be able to expand it, and that can be done safely, and so that's the important part. Do you want to hold that for a second? I know it's kind of weird. This is teamwork. So let's talk about standing orders. Standing orders are also really important for this team-based system to work. We really try to get away from the mother may I. So my clinical pharmacist, she has spent hours and hours and hours writing all of these basically clinical guidelines that say, hey, she takes care of a pain patient. Can she do this, this, or this? She's allowed to order a urine drug screen. She's allowed to review my PDMP report. She's allowed to do this, that, and the other, and that empowers her to see the patient. And it's a simple matter. Not just our nurse practitioners, but even our medical assistants are empowered. If someone comes in with chest pain, before Julie or I walk in the room, they will have their chest x-ray, their EKG, they'll have their D-dimer tested in the troponin, because we do all those on little tabletop equipment, and it takes like 20, 25 minutes. And so standing orders can sometimes really shock physicians. I've had physicians fight it. I had a physician that we hired, and she said, I was trained in my residency that we don't do UAs with physicals. And she would just fight the MAs on me, and MAs would be in tears because they're like, we're trying to do our job. And I had to go back to her and say, look, the standing orders create efficiencies. We know that Miramont lowers healthcare costs 10 to 15% in the local economy. We have that data from Meredith Rosenthal, Harvard researcher who studied us in the multi-month pilot. We're also having some data from CPCI that was favorable, although we are not actually in CPCI anymore. We had to leave to do our ECO. But the standing orders create more efficiencies, and at the end of the day, we have data, population health data, that shows that our outcomes are better than what they used to be, and then better than some of our peers, and our costs are lower. So we believe in our standing orders, and we empower people to do them. And so in a similar manner, it's really important working with Julie. She knows when to call me. And, honestly, I don't want her to send those specialists. I really want her to send those cases by first, and she does a good job at that. Do you have comments on standing orders?
Well, I think one of the pieces that we're still in the development phase of is how do we use an advanced practice nurse to oversee maybe best practice for our MAs. And I will admit that it's been a struggle for me as well, because I am an ER nurse, and so for me to let go of some of those pieces, or to believe that an MA can be trained to a high enough level to be able to start IVs, administer medication safely, it's definitely a stretch. However, we work closely as a team with all the providers to ensure that we make the appropriate steps. And so not just using an RN, which we have in the past, but also now having someone who is able to really be a content expert to help mentor in training situations, to ensure that our staff are trained and empowered appropriately, and then ensuring that we retain them and keep them from the hospital, because they become very valuable at that point as very highly trained personnel. So that's something we've been working a lot on.
Good observations. Another good example of how this is kind of changing, this maybe goes back to scope. We used to hire only med techs to run our labs, and they stopped making med techs. There's only one school now in the entire state of Colorado. The ones in the north have been closed, and they don't graduate enough med techs to fill all the spots. And we've experimented with it. My lab director now is actually a phlebotomist, and they run the machines. They pass the inspections at the national level. I sent them to the training with COLA in Orlando, and it's really more about the skill set of the individual, sometimes than even just their individual degree. The degree is important, but that's just what gets people's feet in the door. The experience comes other ways. That's basically our part of the presentation. Do we have any time for questions? Okay. Yes.
I have a question from somebody on the webinar who is wondering about how you handle telephone orders, if you take those, and do you recommend APRNs with prescriptive authority to do those orders and any prescribing in the home? How do you handle those types of things?
So we do telephone orders. Probably the place where we see this the most is from the nursing homes. You know, skilled nursing will call, and they do have to do another AI. Nursing homes, unfortunately, they're very heavily regulated. Maybe fortunate or not fortunate, depends how you look at it, but sometimes it can become a barrier to care such that if they see the senior citizen is incontinent urine, has a fever, maybe altered mental status, they have to call us and ask to do send a urinalysis. Now, at Miramont, I will tell you, they do not pull me out of the room to give that verbal order. My medical assistants do it, and they do it under the same standing orders that we use in the clinic. So they will oftentimes tell me after the fact, they call, this is what I did, and I say, that's fine. And we basically couch it within that same infrastructure that we built for our clinic population. Now, if the nursing home calls and says, I want to send them to the ER, they do pull me out of the room. Because about half the time, it turns out they don't need to go to the ER. You know, I'll ask them more sophisticated questions like, do they have an advanced directive? Does it say they want to die in the hospital? You know, have you called the family to find out? You know, because maybe they need to go to comfort care. You know, depending on the circumstance. Some people need to go to the ER, but others, that's not what the individual wants. And so I don't know if that answers your question. I guess it kind of depends on the circumstance, but we're very aggressive in letting our medical assistants take that position. Now, in skilled nursing, there are certain visits you can't do. Like there's a regulatory visit where the physician has to see the patient every 60 days under tag 130 or something. And we can alternate that visit such that the minimum amount of contact I would have would be every 4 months, although we typically see people more frequently than that. So we'll, you know, if the rule says it has to be a physician, and, you know, another case in point is simple face-to-face visits that has to be done by a physician, signed off by a physician, and bring them out, bring the patient in CD because the home health agency doesn't pay the bills. Thank you. Yes.
There is an issue about stability of staff really longer than possibly. What have you guys done with some of the pretty complex
Sure.
Well, what is your experience?
Yeah, I mean, at one level, I kind of like people to be interchangeable. I mean, I always make, we have 94 employees at Miramont, and I always make a comment, there's not an MA in the organization I can't work with. You know, someone said, I tell them send me any MA. I have certain docs that like, if their MA is out, they like freak out, you know, who's this stranger in my space? And it's like, you know, you really ought to be able to work with anyone and be able to standardize it to that point. Now, really the patients are the ones who like the same face. You know, I keep the same MA team oftentimes more for them, just because they like to see, you know, Ginger every time they visit or whatever. But to answer your question, maybe this is more of a business question. 7 years ago, hospitals didn't hire MAs. They didn't. They had no use for them, right? And then they started buying ambulatory clinics, and then they discovered they needed MAs. And so the MA job market right now, at least in northern Colorado where I'm at, is such that they are pretty much all sucked dry because Banner is hiring them, the Valley is hiring them because they need them for all these ambulatory clinics that they require. So Miramont looked at that, and we had several options. One was, well, we just have to try to match the hospital benefits. It was easy to do on pay. We wrote that part there. Where we were having trouble was with some of the other things the hospital can offer, like their health insurance programs. You know, they basically give it away for free, and we were having a hard time meeting some of that, because even though I can control the primary care costs, when it comes to underwriting costs for, you know, a national plan like the Blues or something, you know, I'm paying higher and higher premiums just like everyone. So that part got a little harder. So some of the innovative things we did is we said, well, why don't we hire who else could fill this position? So we've hired more LPNs, more EMTs, paramedics, and CNAs. And what we've found is that they basically can be easily transitioned into an MA position. EMTs oftentimes are more aggressive than the MAs. It's kind of fun because they don't get as grossed out on problems, and they're more excited about going and starting the IV. The LPNs, maybe they're a little bit good at the teaching side. You know, I can bring them in and have them train some how to use inflow meter or how to administer the nebulizer or something like that. CNAs are better at some of the care stuff. I mean, if I need a patient catheterized, the CNAs are in there and they know how to do it. A lot of MAs have never done that. Or if someone needs to be toileted, I mean, that's amazing. Like, wow, we had a person vomit in the waiting room one time, and I'll never forget this. Like, the 5 MAs kind of turned and started trying to find something to do. I had the CNA, and she just jumped up with zeal, and she ran out there, and she just cleaned it up. She knew exactly what to do, and it didn't even bother her because she had come from an environment where that was her job. So a diversified workforce, is one solution to that. As far as when it comes to provider staff, I take nurse practitioners who do not have independent prescriptive authority, and they will come and say, I need my 3,600 hours. It's probably going to be lower now. There's some legislation that's in place, but right now it's still 3,600 hours. And I have taken probably 4 or 5 nurse practitioners through that process, or have some that are still in that process. And they'll tell me they can't get a job anywhere else. And so they're very happy to work for us. Occasionally, when they finish, they will go somewhere else. But most of them stay. They get happy with their environment and their environment. And so I'm sort of our recruiting tool to go off of that to them. And doing the oversight piece is really easy in an integrated environment like this, because I can log in from Chicago and see what their prescriptions are for that day and sign the notes. And so it's not that big of a deal.
Another, I guess, new model that we're now in our second phase of is that we're hiring support staff in groups. We're calling them like the freshman and sophomore and junior and senior class of 2015.
Waves.
In waves, yes.
So instead of like hiring a new MA every 3 weeks to grow or whatever, we'll stack it up and hire 40 people like at a 6-week interval, so that they can all go through training processes together, and that's more efficient. We were a little large organization 7 years ago when I was in one location that wouldn't make sense, but with 6 offices that makes sense for us.
One of the changes that we've seen is that they start to support each other, and so they develop a kind of a camaraderie, and that in this, we're now on our second wave of this. In the first wave, we lost 1 out of 10. Yeah, which is phenomenally different than how we had hired even over the past year. And so we're excited to see, and it's easier to train in that environment as well, of course, because we are larger. It's something we can do.
And I depend on my nurse practitioners to do a lot of training. I mean, I don't do the IV skills lab, Julie does. And Julie, being a nurse by trade, has more expertise in actual care. When it comes to like little things, she noticed one day that the MAs were ordering needles that were just a tad too short for doing some other vaccinations. And I reflected on that and go, yeah, we have had a few people come in with a big red arm the next day where it probably was subcuticular, not intramuscular. And Julie pointed out, she was just going to go from 1 inch to 1.5. And I wouldn't have thought of that, and she'd see that as a nurse. That's what she does. And so it wasn't a big deal. We just changed in our inventory control system. The MAs were on the order, and that's it. So it's been very handy to have her expertise at the table as well for some of those care issues. Yes?
So we hear from a lot of clinics, who are smaller clinics, that they would love to be able to have pharmacists on staff, or extra nursing staff, or patient advocate, or health worker. What is your response to those folks who are in those smaller clinics, who has built your system not to be able to support all of those folks? If there are issues that they feel like they can't.
I guess every solution is going to need to be individualized too.
Dr. Bender, could you just repeat the question?
Oh, I'm sorry, I have to repeat the question. So the question was, for a smaller practice environment that is interested in having a clinical pharmacist or licensed clinical social worker access to some of the other disciplines, what would be some strategies for making that work from a sustainability standpoint? Some of the models that I have heard about but have not actually participated in are shared models. I know Health Teamworks has looked at this, where you would get like an IPA, or perhaps if you participate in ACO or maybe one of the RICOs, and they would hire one person who would then be shared among different disciplines. With our psychologists, they are my employees now, but they weren't initially. They were co-located, and they would basically pay me rent And when they first came in, they might only work a half day a week. When they got to where they were there about 5 days a week, we're like, let's just call space, put it on the payroll and be done with this. And so we did. So you might be able to ease yourself into it by, might be a good pharmacist who's going to work part-time under his or her own license and do their own taxes and that sort of thing, payroll taxes. The other part about it is being innovative and trying to figure out how do we get paid for this. The reason I brought psychology in-house initially was I wasn't getting paid to do behavioral health. I mean, if a person came into my office and told me, that they had been sexually assaulted years ago and started crying, I mean, I might be in the room now 40 minutes and now my schedule is filled for the rest of the day. Now what I can do is I can spend 15 minutes, write the minutes that will be written, and I can grab one of my psychologists in there and she'll spend an hour with that person. And that person doesn't feel like they were passed off. It's kind of different. If I would have handed them a card and said, go see a psychologist, they would have felt that I had dismissed them. But because I bring the psychologist in the room and do this warm handoff, they actually feel like I took them seriously, like, wow, you really dropped everything and got the psychologist in there right away. And the reality is I only spent 15 minutes. I didn't have that schedule. And so the other part to it was I didn't have a way to get paid for that extra time in the room, but the psychologist did. So they could bill under their license and under their contracts. Over time, Nermont gained the competencies in how to do the billing, because behavioral health billing is very different from primary care billing. And we actually have one person like is half the time, but all she does is get the prior approvals on it because we can't ask our MAs to do it. It's too complicated. So it does require some persistence and resolve. At first you may lose a little bit of money on it in the short run, but in the long run, if you build it to sustainability, it creates efficiencies elsewhere. My behavioral health patients, basically are more likely to not abuse the prescription medicines I write. It's easier for me to manage opiate patients, for example. It's easier to keep them out of the emergency room. I mean, showing someone who's been to the ER 30 times, I'll show you someone who needs to see my psychologist, right? So that's the other payoff then is can you get accountable care dollars or gain sharing dollars from other sources because you're lowering the global cost of care by having this package. Tracy. It's interesting. I've hired 3 registered nurses over the years. Every single one of them went back and got their nurse practitioner and became an APN. So they started as RNs. I've not been able to keep them more than 2 years without them going on. Because I think they get involved with it and they're like, well, I can do this. And then they do. So we end up being a stepping stone.
And one piece to that, I'll speak to both questions. I think what's innovative about what we're doing is that I can bill for my time. And so we still have the benefit of having RN experience and being able to be there available as the expert in nursing skills. However, I sustain being able to work because I'm not just a salaried employee. And so that's another way to look at it is that at least in the primary healthcare setting, one of the ways to avoid the large cost of RNs is to get your advanced practice nurses perhaps to take on more responsibilities to fill those needs.
Yeah, particularly like infusion centers are probably a no-brainer. We've been doing IPV class, IPV settlement, advanced medication, antibiotics, almost having CS, we don't charge the facility fee. Bigger thing like insurance, we're a no-brainer in that regard. And they could see the nurse practitioner for each of those visits. We've had special training come in to teach them how to access the power reports and that sort of special renewal diagnosis. She knows this stuff. By trade, so that we could actually make infusion centers a reality. Yes.
Would you be willing to talk about how you approach provider compensation in terms of productivity model or addressing some of the challenging things like maybe Julie driving around from SNF to SNF?
So the question was about payment for productivity. You mean as far as how I structure contracts and I pay as opposed to what the payers are paying us?
What you're paying your providers.
Sure. So most of our staff are on some sort of base rate, either an hourly rate or a base salary, and then they have a productivity bonus that can vary. And for the partners, their production is a much larger part of their earnings, so they're paid up to like a 17% productivity. Most of my nurse practitioners can be between 5 and 10%. The bigger the production, the more risks they're taking, but also the more gain they have, because that base salary gives them a floor. So it's not unusual for us to bring people on, maybe a little higher floor, a little lower productivity, and once they start to get to goal, move them into a higher productivity model. We have looked at, but have not yet implemented, quality bonus payments. We are still in the phase where we're reporting our quality metrics. We had to build infrastructure once we weaned off of Health Teamworks and CPCI so that we could do that ourselves. We hired a company called CINA. They mine our SQL database. We produce monthly exception reports. We call them the red, yellow, green reports, and it shows the docs where they're at. And I have looked at several different ways to aggregate that. What's probably the most realistic, if we deploy it this year, is we would pay everyone their productivity. We would ascribe it to them, and then we would take out like 10 to 15% and set it aside in a pool, and then we would redistribute that the same month based on where they were at in the metrics. So if someone's a really high producer but has horrible quality, they might not earn as much, as someone who, someone takes a little more time and is getting all their metrics, they might be able to make it up in part, so that we do that. And that's a blended model that really medical clinics use that is involved. And they're providers that we have 55 providers and we have with it. All right, well, you've been a lovely audience. Thank you so much for hosting us today.
Thank you. Well, I think that you can see that this is amazing, quite the energetic, innovative, tenacious, determined, and really willing to think outside the box. So I think we all need to certainly learn those things, and I think in order to be successful, we're all going to have to figure out new ways to skin a cat in healthcare, or we're not going to get very far. So with that, we're just a little bit early, but we're going to go ahead and break for lunch unless everybody has anything else, any other questions or anything to talk about. So we'll take a break and we'll come back just a few minutes before noon. I would recommend that you chat with people that you don't know, that you do some networking, and maybe that where you can have better proximity with people as you eat lunch. Okay, enjoy lunch. It's ready in the entranceway out there.
I can't. You do that? Thank you for joining us for the webinar. We are going to take a couple minutes break, approximately 30 minutes. We will leave the webinar on, so please continue to hang on, and we will start back at approximately noon. Thanks so much.
Is there an extra lunch? Oh, absolutely. Oh my gosh, I always do that. Okay. So do you want to do it? Sure. Yeah, let's do that. Let's do it. I've got it, I believe. Let's see. Yes. The registration for Let's see if I can do this. Actually, I'm going to do this. Registration. Okay, tell me your email address.
Tara, T-A-R-A, .Trujillo.
T-R-U-G-I.
Okay.
Okay.
At state.co.us.
US. Okay, and are you a nurse?
No.
Are you any of these folks?
So see you.
Other.
Okay. Great.
Plenty of time. Yeah.
Awesome.
Okay.
M&M, that's true. Nonprofit.
Great. Oh, really?
M&M.
Oh,
The candy.
excellent.
Not that sweet.
Not that sweet, huh? Let's see. Don't worry about a badge. CDPHE. Correct. All right. Tell me the address.
4300
Okay, city's Denver. Colorado, 246. All right, we don't need any of that. We don't need that. Good. Continue. Oh, you know what I have to say. Okay, great. Continue. $15. Anyway. What's a visa? Okay. Tell me your visa. Actually, you know what? Don't tell me because that's okay. So I will just do this. Does that work?
I don't know that if they're.
I've never seen a car like this. Okay. Yeah, it's just different. It's just aligned. It's aligned different. That's fine. Here's one.
Yeah.
Well, she was that big, she reported to work, and I'm like, "You're gonna rock my car." She's like, "I'm gonna
Confirmation email is sent to you. So, if you need, you'll okay, so that's good. Excellent. Thank you so much. Yes, please have it as much. We've got lots of salad and sandwiches out there, fruit bowls, water in the fridge. Okay.
You can put it all out on the table.
Oh, awesome. Oh, good. Okay, super. Okay.
And then people were welcome to have themselves served.
Oh, absolutely.
Both on the
Yep.
phone.
Okay. So I just sent you this invite. Here. I know they're. Let me open this and show you. So this is the. I mean, it's so ugly, but it's okay. So, and it just goes out to 300 people. Okay. A specific event, attendee event.
Okay. So this isn't going out to you.
I don't know. I'm not sure if she'll want us to do that. And if so, we can tailor it too.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I mean, I would like to cook this a little bit more strategically, but if it's just the small, then this might not be the best one to even target that to. The only thing with that is it gets a bit much in an email. So is there a place, like, is it on Ridge Online? Is it how?
Well, here's the thing. So I would like to use this new event Squid platform. We have a call with them tomorrow. My thought is I'd really like to use them for this new event. I don't want to use Red Online anymore. They're a mess. So with that being said, I was hoping, this would pacify her. What I can also do is put this in a calendar invite, but I don't know.
We could potentially house it somewhere on the website. If it needs to cut immediately, we'll just figure it out. It's okay. It's just, it's kind of a long thing.
Yes, it is. Absolutely. I mean, really what you want in an email, and tell me if I'm wrong, you really want like this, right?
Yeah, and you want the snappiest little bit of information. So you can say,
Maybe we could say, click here to view the agenda.
yeah.
Hi. You don't have to sign in, but you have a lovely badge, so you don't want to. You don't.
No, I don't.
But actually, I am gonna go around and check in everyone.
Stuck here.
Oh, I know. Right?
So.
Or on your shoe, and then it attaches to the toilet paper, and then it's a whole scenario.
Oh, nice.
Right? I've done it. I have done it. In fact, I did that last week at a conference.
I've never attested to the toilet paper before, but I'll have to watch out
Well,
for that.
you gotta watch that. See? Everything. Thank you for joining us.
Sure,
Tell,
yeah.
what's your name?
Deb.
Deb. Nice to meet you. Okay, so part of this is cool. What I do like about Reg Online is when there's a conference or something, you can check people in, and it's super easy and really nice because then you can send the survey to them, and it's easy that way. Let's see, so the team. Yeah.
So,
Of course. Okay, yeah, that sounds good. So what we can do is you can, well, here's what we do is you launch it, not that you really care, I mean, but this is really helpful, is you select her and you check her in.
okay.
I do like that.
That is really nice though, because I might even see if I can sort of buddy up with you for the survey that we send out, especially to our see folks and data in our web surveys. And so if we can kind of review it, push it up and see what's going on, and then we can, that can go back to my marketing stuff and start communicating. I really like this. This is why I came.
Oh, I know.
These guys are local.
These guys are in Lone Tree.
Okay.
And hilarious. Very friendly, very easy to work with, and it's kind of like a one-stop shop place. So I'm really excited about that. The event, like their event webpage is really nice. So we're going to talk to them about. This is their. I think it looks beautiful. It's just so much more polished than my. I mean, really, this is like, it was great 2 years ago, but
It's just not really getting updated.
it's not.
And see, like, I love these event statistics because I want to track, okay, if we sent a mailer and then 20 people registered, I know there's something about
Absolutely.
that works. So, I mean, really, the biggest thing I'm concerned about is the statistics.
Okay, well, and that's one thing I want
maybe
you to
they
ask
even have
them.
more sophisticated stuff.
Yeah.
You never know.
Wouldn't that be nice? So we're going to chat with students having such a good day. It has a large creative disk. Oh, no. Sarah, have you grabbed something to eat?
I am not.
Okay, you're not? I am at the Hungry Box. I'm going to go ahead and do that. Oh, and I have to look at this.
Do you ever watch Saturday Night Live? There's they just, last year they did, when you go home and you're like staying at your childhood.
Yes, I mean, the dance. Yeah.
My daycare lady called and said, Brooks has cracked himself all the way up to the back. So, right. And I said, oh, super. Great. So he's got a whole new outfit on. But he's playing. He is. He's wading to his buddies, so.
Maybe he's just like.
I think it is. Which is.
Everything's just not working out so great right now.
I'm so scared to fly on an airplane with him.
Where are you going?
We're going to DC next week for 5 days.
For fun? Or
Fun? What's that? No, for a for a volleyball tournament.
Oh, okay. Oh my gosh, she goes everywhere. I can't believe that. Like,
We're going to New Orleans in June.
a gal I used to work with, she had like two different families. All of her vacation days.
Oh yeah.
Their extra money was spent on her.
What is nice about our situation? So we split everything. But it's $3,700, $3,800 a year for just the volleyball. That doesn't include our flights and our. It's a lot. Yeah, she loves it. She's good. She's really good.
Well, if that pays off in the scholarship.
And that's exactly what we're hoping, and that's what she's hoping for. You know, she's
Things going good?
Oh yeah, there's Kendall.
Oh.
This is her team. Raquel, so oh good, you got a good salad. Yeah. Okay. I don't know what that is. Was that your phone?
It is.
Is it?
I'm gonna.
Oh sure, they're all around the room. So let me go.
They're all around.
Oh.
So maybe this end.
It's chillier over here.
Break it out.
Oh, yeah. This is unfortunate. It's kind of cold.
Did I tell you I broke my first stop?
Oh, yeah. Yep.
And I ran into.
Okay, I'm gonna grab some lunch too, I think.
Okay,
So
let's
I'm
do that. Yeah, that sounds good. Okay, so Raquel.
That's what I heard, right? Subway?
I started inquiring about it. Yeah. Thanks. For those two vendors, because they're like, vendor in the state versus. So I think to get together to she's doing national vendors to do that. And they have good practices to get better data and better ratings. So I need to get how that's going. I don't know how I figure out that. Yeah. Yeah, the system really is no, we're in the right place. I think so. So Dr. Carpenter, I'm so sad that you were so early. I heard about like 6 years ago, I started that senior I mean, it's so great to help.
How was your trip to Texas? I heard you talking about it a little bit.
It was good. It was good. I'm not as much time in front. So like my impressions of the city, I get like a solid night here.
Keep talking.
It's okay. The city, like the, oh my gosh.
It's so bad. I know. My eyes are watering. It's so sad.
The city itself is like, if you're not having to traverse the suburbs, like any city, if you don't have to like go to this family part, it's like actually very nice.
Okay. Oh my gosh, no, it's not even like summer yet.
Yeah. Yeah, the weather was like really nice. Yeah.
Okay. Did you like the schools?
It was okay. It was like trying to like coordinate meeting with people and then like meeting with the person who like she was like her just wasn't very polished. And I don't know if it's just like that is how it is, or it was just like it was like almost too relaxed, like too casual. It's like, well, this is professional, you know, like we're. So there's some hesitancy there, but the way that it works is it's connected as part of Houston has this like health science center built up. It's basically like downtown Denver, but like all of the skyscrapers are all high-rise buildings.
Okay.
So I mean, it's amazing.
Very health centric.
Yeah,
or medical centric.
Yeah, there's amazing resources like right, you can do research or whatever with any of these. So there's a lot of opportunity.
Okay, that's interesting. Did Jeff go with you?
He didn't.
Okay.
So, I just was in Houston. I'm probably not going to visit too late, but I'm setting up trying to like soccer practices and stuff. And then I'm going to go to UCLA. We're not going.
Oh, good.
It's hard, isn't it? It's really hard.
I'm holding the deck for her.
So yeah, And maybe it could be where I get the most.
That makes it hard. It's hard to turn that down.
Well, it's like, I think LA would be amazing. I think it would be hard, but I think it would be amazing. But it's also like, I mean, like, I'm looking at like $1,500, $2,000 rent. You know, rent is like crazy.
For sure. Yeah, the cost of living, I'm sure, there adds up
Yeah,
fast.
it just feels scary to like commit to like being somewhere for 5 years. I'm not sure if it's my rent.
It's a 5-year program.
Or it'll be 5 years. Yeah, I mean, it's gotta write that dissertation.
Oh my gosh, that's a long doctoral program, isn't it? I mean, humanities doctoral programs are like 2 or 3 years, I think, usually, aren't they?
Oh no, they're longer. They're like 7 or 8 years to write your dissertation. It just depends on how long.
I guess.
So you have like 2 years. You usually take comps your 3rd year. You're done with the comps, you just and then however long you do your research.
Okay.
Write a book.
So it's not really.
Yikes.
I actually am a coach, yes.
So you met him, but you just actually.
No, I would not.
But I was really surprised at how much I like it felt it was like actually a really cute little
Oh, that's cool.
city, which I was like never.
You weren't expecting that as much?
Not really.
No, I would know. I don't know any.
There's no zoning laws there. Or very little zoning laws. So everything is like.
Is the school, so it's next to that medical campus, I'm sure, but then is that close to like their downtown, or?
Sort of. It's like, it's a relatively, I would say, it's very car focused, but it's a relatively dense. Like there's lots of, it's like Neverland, it's like lots of little neighborhoods, like huge restaurant areas. So it seems to be very, the city itself is like very diverse. I mean, I think oil and all of the industry like brings in people from all over the world.
I know.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I have a friend from college who lives in Houston. She just bought a house, but I think they bought out in the suburbs somewhere. It's like it's pretty cheap to buy houses out there, I think.
Yeah, I don't know how much to do.
Oh, yeah.
Suburbs are
Really?
To me.
Oh.
But any suburb is American.
Yeah, they want to disrupt.
Oh, yeah.
Dialysis, and they try to be the patient center home to the dialysis patient, which well, I mean, part of it is like when a dialysis patient gets sick, they still want to manage it. They don't want to go to retail management because ultimately it could mess up their dialysis. It's kind of like oncology does the same thing because they're cancer patients and we're doing bone marrow transplants and stuff. They don't want the family physician touching them, the interest touching them, they don't want the cardiologist to do it, they don't touch it themselves because if it gets screwed up and you're facing the chemotherapy, then the stakes are too high, the person could die. And so they tend to get very possessive. And those are two groups that are hard for me to serve. But you hear me say how I haven't used an endocrinologist for years. And there's a lot of cognitive specialists like dermatology and neurology where they're mostly paid to thinking, they look, they diagnose, and they think about it. Those are easy to disrupt. The proceduralists are hard to disrupt because, if you need your gallbladder out, you have to see some surgeon. And at the end of the day, the oncologists are kind of proceduralists in the sense that they get chemotherapy. And the regimens are very complicated, a lot of them study protocols. Let's get used to it. And so they'll say, with their research protocol, they'll say,
How was your weekend? You guys do anything? Age?
We were just like outside all weekend. It was so nice out.
That's amazing.
So we just spent like all day on Saturday at the park and Sunday to work a little bit, but yeah, that was really nice too. We're like getting our yard ready. We do a lot of like garden beds and flowers and stuff. We're getting ready for all that stuff. And
Do you start ceilings or?
I don't usually start inside because I'm just not good with things that grow indoors. I got some more indoor plants after a whole bunch that I had died, so we're trying those out. But so I usually do things that can be planted like right just before the first or the last frost, and then things that go into the ground right after the last frost. So we are kind of limited on what we do, and then yeah, we're just getting ready for broccoli. We do beans, tomatoes, cucumbers. Squash. I've done pumpkins in the past, but they kind of take over and like everything else dies. And then I know, it was fun. I just like decorated with a bunch of them. I mean, it was really nice, but they took over and kind of killed a lot of my other stuff. So yeah, we were just getting ready for that. Monday we had a late St. Patrick's Day party with our little like group of capital friends. So yeah, that was really fun. We're gonna start playing on a kickball league, and our first game is next week Friday, and it's at Veterans Park, which is like right by South High School.
By Washington Park.
Okay. And so, yeah, I think it must be quite a bit smaller than Wash Park, sure. And I don't think Wash Park lets us do anything besides volleyball nets. But yeah, so we're starting that, and so that'll be fun. And I think people are just going to get beforehand because we can just walk over there. So. Right. Yeah, it'll be really fun. Yeah. Right? But I don't know. It is. Is everybody doing all right? How's everyone on the webinar? Yep, we're open for right now, just so people don't accidentally get booted off or anything. So
let's see if there's any emails from folks. That's all right. Okay, looks great. Raquel likes it. Okay, can we put this? I never spell absolutely right. I always mess that word up. There's like 5 words I can't get it together.
I've started to like mush family and physician, so I always spell family with a PH.
Yes, well, I do too.
I never like miss that I did this, and people are gonna be like, "Oh, girl."
That would be a good resource for us as well.
Believe Sarah, Dr. Hoffitis was president here this year at one point. Seems like it, yeah.
But I guess she's getting
It should be a really interesting presentation. Judy.
Yeah. People are still.
Mhm.
I don't know. I suppose it was how nice it's been lately, but my allergies have just been awful.
Right? Yes.
Oh gosh, last night I was just like,
Oh no.
and then it snowed.
Now it'll
No.
tamp it down a little bit. Of course. Of course, of course. So any follow-up with Houston?
I haven't. I should hear about some funding stuff and
Good. Okay.
I don't know. I'm kind of, I don't know.
You need to go check the other place out.
Yeah.
See how that is.
I know, it just feels really, I mean, like, cost wise, LA seems like, you know, like it's
Absolutely.
totally crazy to like think that, I mean, I don't know. So,
Well,
part of me is like, if I like the program, I should just do it and figure it out. And I've worked lots of jobs before.
you have, Sarah, and sit down to make a budget.
Yeah.
I believe you're probably pretty good at that, right? Did you see the thing
Some may even say neurotic.
Some maybe Jack.
I don't know.
Did you see the thing I sent to you this morning?
I didn't look at it.
Oh, you're gonna need to watch the video.
How great is that? Vine. Did you look at that Vine?
With tears.
Yeah.
It's a good pick-me-up, you know? How was your meal?
It's fun. We'll save stuff for the car ride home. I have to keep on driving because I get sick.
Oh, well, you can also take another something for dinner tonight if you'd like.
Oh, this will be dinner. I'm back a doggy bag for you. So,
Oh,
tell about
sure.
What time were we supposed to start?
We're supposed to start at noon-ish, right? Yes. Let me find the,
We don't want to start too late.
right? Okay, so you've got,
Yeah.
and then I think right below.
Right below.
Yeah, and even, oh, you know what? Here. I'll help you. Let me fix this. Okay. Let's fix this so it doesn't turn while you're.
Well, it would take me half a day.
There we go. It won't turn if you like go like this.
I bumped my
And hopefully it won't. We've got a couple minutes. It won't close down. Just make sure you touch it every couple seconds so it doesn't. Very good. I don't know. I'll stay there more times than I
Would you be willing to grab a few more pics for me, Sarah? Just so we have one of each of the speakers.
Yeah.
I mean, not right now.
Do anything else? Do you want me to do you want to see one of her calendars?
Sure.
Or you tell me what.
No, you, I was just gonna grab a few random ones from around the event.
So do you want like or no?
I guess so. So it's like people doing this networking group. I can do it too.
Did you want me to do it? Are you gonna do it?
You got it.
Just that idea of the interaction on the phone probably right away you're going to forget it or not. So I went to one coach, half hour.
also nurse. And I sent her the webinar. I was like, listen to that. See if she's on.
Thank you. I'm sorry, I didn't mean you to like get up and interrupt yourself and take pictures just when the people are talking.
Let's do that. And I'll say. Thanks everyone for hanging out and waiting for us to begin. We're going to start here in the next couple of minutes. And the next presentation will be from Dr. Hoffitz and Judy Hewitt. The slides will be up here shortly. Thanks so much.
Testing.
See.
Did we get a few candidates?
We need to.
We should.
You're gonna like look at these and you're gonna be like,
No, I'm not. No, I'm not.
Well, good afternoon again, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started so we don't keep anyone on the webinar waiting too long. I think it's important to take note that Colorado is really on the leading edge of all of this focus on patient care, and we have really set the pace for a lot of the country, getting a lot of national recognition for our innovation and forward thinking. And our next speakers have been part of that. They were part of the original pilot that was conducted by Health Teamworks, and all of the practices that are speaking today have been involved in that. They were part of the original pilot that I think certified in 2009, and I think they all did. The next speaker is Dr. Tracy Hoffitz. He is a family physician and works at Belmar Family Medicine. And were you the founding person? Yeah, I thought so. I thought that you were. So he's currently an associate professor at the University of Colorado and very active in patient-centered medical home, has a lot of wisdom to share. And also with him is his practice manager. Her name is Judy Hewitt. He hired her shortly after starting Belmar Family Medicine, about 8 months afterwards, I guess, and they've been together going through many transition and changes over the past many years, and have worked with new EMRs and all of the different changes in healthcare. And it's a pleasure to introduce them. Dr. Hoffitz is going to be speaking first.
Thank you very much. Well, it's an honor and privilege to be able to be here with all of you today. It's and also to be doing this together with my practice manager, Judy Hewitt. We've done this together now pretty much from the beginning. Belmar Family Medicine has evolved since 2005 to be one of the first patient-centered medical homes in the state in that multi-payer pilot, and Judy has been a huge part of that. And I'm very lucky and proud to have her as a partner in all of this. The multi-payer pilot was a huge thing for us. Transforming to become a medical home has really been clear to me to be one of the most important things that's happened in my practice, in my career. And I recognize it as the answer, at least that level of primary care, to so much of what ails our healthcare system. But we have to go well beyond that. We have to go well beyond that in terms of our organizing, as whether it's the ACOs, integrated systems. But for primary care to do its job in the the future patient-centered medical home and all of the things that means is really necessary. But a big part of that, and this is why I'm especially happy to be speaking with you today, is really also recognizing that physicians, family physicians, cannot do it alone. We need to recognize the need for our relationship with other care providers, certainly nurses, registered nurses, advanced practice nurses, and certainly LPNs, MAs. All of those relationships need to be ready to evolve in a positive way. What positive means is debatable and needs to be worked out in time as we share these kinds of meetings together. But it's certainly not going to be what it was like, I think, pretty much just before I started, and it's been a while back now, over 30 years ago, where nurses would wear uniforms and caps, and they would get out of chairs to let doctors sit down. I frankly never saw that. I only heard that story. But I remember thinking, that doesn't seem right. And it certainly wasn't right when I started in practice, and it isn't right now. There needs to be much more of a less hierarchical relationship between physicians and other care providers. And at Belmar, I think we have succeeded with one registered nurse in our care coordinator position. I'll be talking about it in a little more detail a little bit later. To see that relationship really be a much more effective collegial relationship as opposed to me saying all the orders and telling everyone what to do. As a clinical leader, as the team leader at Belmar, that has changed, and I guess I give myself some credit for recognizing the need for that and succeeding with that. But it is very much a work in progress. If I could ask, where is the slide changer?
Oh, who has the slide changer?
The what?
The slide changer? Dr. Bender, do you have the little slide changer? Aha!
Nice and warm.
Near his car.
Yes. Wrong direction. I am certainly honored to be part of a group of practices that includes Miramont, includes Westminster after us. Both of those practices, I would have to say, I aspire to in terms of them really representing a lot of very effective commitment to transformation and maturation of medical homes. And I look forward to Dr. Coleman's comments about his own practice, because I think of it as his especially as sort of the flagship. We were all in that multi-payer pilot, and it really was a joy and a really growing experience for me to be able to learn from both of them and the other members of that pilot. All of that facilitated in really effective ways by health teamwork. I look forward to seeing more of that model helping other practices evolve. This is our team at Belmar. So this isn't as complex as at Miramont, of course. We're an independent small practice, 2 physicians and 1 nurse practitioner. Judy, the practice manager, care coordinator who is a registered nurse, a receptionist, and then 5 MAs that rotate through the back office and the scheduler position. One of the smarter things we've done, and I'm not sure, Judy, if that was your idea or it just evolved organically, but in terms of practice operation, the scheduler position can be such a place of conflict, turmoil, and tension. And having everyone share in that position, and all of the back office, has really been very effective. Our biller, and then lastly, our counselor. We have a relationship with the Jefferson Center for Mental Health to provide mental health services, and I would suggest that that's one of the other significant aspects of our maturation as a medical home, is having co-located or integrated mental health services because of our partnership with the Jefferson Center. This is a picture of Jen in her counseling room. That room is actually just an exam room that would be quickly convertible if necessary, but it hasn't been necessary. Judy did a wonderful job of decorating it and bringing in stuff that makes it a really comfortable place for a patient to be and and feel much more like they're truly with the counselor, not in an exam room. One of the things that I'll mention now about the 5 MAs, and this relates to how our practice operates in terms of team dynamic, that we have teamlets. I would suggest that Judy and I are sort of a leadership teamlet, where we work together and interact a lot with our roles in the office, but the same holds true for our MAs, because there are several processes in the office where we have process champions. And that can be our refill, the refill process champion, the referrals process champion, the lab and result tracking process champion. These are all MAs who have a specific role to be responsible for the function of those services. But all of the MAs share and share those processes and interact with each other to be able to make sure that the job gets done if there's vacations, absences, or whatever, and that's actually gone very well. Today, I'm going to talk a little bit more about how our team has matured as we've been in medical home, as the leaders of that team, myself, Judy, have understood how to be better leaders ourselves. We'll talk about two specific examples of how we've been able to help team members function at a higher level. A critical function, I think, for team leaders to help team members do is to learn new skills and function in different ways to help the entire team function at a higher level. The two ways that I'll be discussing our care coordinator in what we'll term augmented visits, and then the other way is our 3MA true provider model, which for us has really worked remarkably well in terms of helping us provide better care without keeping the workload on the providers too high. Judy will talk in detail about that. I was talking with Nicole some about this when we were in the pilot, learning about medical home. The second joint principle talks about team leaders leading teams, but it doesn't say very much about what that really means or how to do it. I would say I am not innately a leader, not certainly innately a clinical leader that has ever received training to understand what that really means. And so I've had to do this sort of on the job and learn from others like John, like Scott, and other physicians who are in positions of leadership to be able to help understand how they help teams function better. I've been fortunate enough that Judy has actually been quite fluent with a model how to understand teams, and she actually did a really wonderful presentation to our staff meetings monthly to help understand a paradigm of understanding teams called the 5 dysfunctions of a team by Patrick Lencioni. I don't think there's anything necessarily very special about that. I mean, it's certainly good, it's an example, but I think my point in bringing that up is I needed something to have as a structure to understand what it meant to be a better team, what team dynamics meant, how to understand how to help people function better as a team. And the 5 dysfunctions is something worth seeing as an example of that. But I do think that we need doctors, especially doctors who are interested to help teams, registered nurses who are interested to be helping be part of teams and leading them, advanced practice nurses, all need to be looking at finding ways to learn how to be better leaders. And this approach I've taken with Judy's help has been effective, but having some kind of academic study and practice and watching for your own improvement, I think, is pretty critical. I don't want to spend too much time on this slide, in fact, really none, except to see that that just is a structure of this 5 dysfunctions of a team that helps in understanding the dysfunctions, how to recognize functional team behaviors and avoid getting into difficulties with disruptive behaviors that make it hard for the team to function better. Earlier in the course of all this, we had a really interesting interaction at a staff meeting where, as part of medical home, we were planning 10 hours, and we had sort of standard 8:30 to 4, I think, patient hours. We wanted to extend. The idea was how long, what days, how would that look? Judy and I both presented this to the staff and looked forward to them buying into this through helping us clarify how we were going to achieve that goal. It was a really interesting interaction because the staff members were pretty quiet initially. We talked to them, asked questions, but and tried to develop some ideas. What ended up ultimately happening is that we asked for dissenters, asked for people to explain, to discuss their issues, why it would be hard. At that point, a couple of the staff members made comments that suggested it would be difficult, or there would be certain barriers or troubles that would make it hard for them to be supportive of it. And we really watched as the rest of the team worked those problems through, and even interacted with the staff that was having difficulty with the proposed changes. And defining what those changes would end up being and having it be something everybody could ultimately be pleased with. It was exciting to me to see that happen because, number one, we didn't have to force it, we didn't have to order it or require it, but everybody being involved in the decision-making process really helped it become something everybody could enjoy the successes and be bought in. And it's worked very well ever since. I think it was last year or early before that, as I was interested in and learning more about what it meant to be a clinical leader, that I read an article by Richard Boehmer. He's a Harvard Business School academic. And the reason I'm mentioning this article in this talk today is that it resonated so well with me. I hadn't seen a lot of this article or a lot of its concepts, but I had sort of learned it the hard way by interacting, learning what the requirements of being a leader might be through just through being a leader. But he describes four tasks of being a good clinical leader, and I wanted to go through that a little bit. One of the things that this article makes clear is that being a better clinical leader is important in helping these new structures that are involved in healthcare reform. Certainly patients in a medical home, ACOs, need clinical leaders to be what that means and be better at it. I don't think that's something you can learn, and that's this article describes that process. And I think that what I learned is that a lot of that experience was recognized academically as making sense. First, having group purpose, vision, mission, and goals. And that's something that clinical leaders need to be ready to establish, clarify, and maintain not only on paper, but also in terms of their actions and the words they use and how they approach changes in practices. The second task that Dr. Boehmer describes is something called clinical microsystems, which I think, as I understand that, it's a little bit vague, but it really describes culture. And it really suggests that clinical leaders need to help teams recognize the inherent tension between compassionate patient-centered care and what can be pretty dry and pretty rigid evidence-based or quality measure-driven care that I think can be very difficult it can sometimes stress the doctor-patient, provider-patient relationship. So an 80-year-old who has diabetes and has an A1C of 8% may be just fine, even if you don't meet the quality indicator. Or a blood pressure of 150 over 90 may be very adequate when the quality indicator might be for it to be below 130 over 80. So being ready to listen to patients, understand what their goals are, what their wishes are, and balance that out with evidence-based measures and quality processes that tension will always be there. And good clinicians and clinician leaders will need to continue to manage that. The last two of those tasks of clinical leaders, really from my perspective as a medical home team leader, are the most critical and most data dependent. I'm the most excited about being able to measure how I'm performing and then also finding ways to improve that. And that's really, these are both things that Dr. Boehmer makes clear are critical to a team, is having a measurement system to be able to both see how you're doing, but also have regular reports of how you're doing and processes to improve. And that becomes a continuing critical part of being a higher functioning medical home. So care coordination Belmar style, and I say that, I think the care coordinator position, from my perspective, is maybe not unique to medical home, but it is critical and necessary to be a medical home. And I think the qualifications for, training for, being a good care coordinator, I still haven't seen a single best description of that. Our experience with the care coordinator position has been on-the-job training, first starting with MAs, and that didn't work out well because the clinical skills of the MAs didn't meet some of the expectations that we had for the care coordinator position. Our current care coordinator, Mackenzie Bell, has been when we hired her, was training to be a registered nurse. She was a master's in public health and a personal trainer, and learned a lot about database management to be able to do a lot of the skills that I've listed there. But her training and interest in becoming a registered nurse was really critical because we were able to really look at developing advanced clinical services that the care coordinator could provide. We worked with Caitlin Barba, who works with Scott Hammond at Westminster now, to develop a series of clinical visits called Passport to Health. 5 visits, only with the care coordinator, that would go through a series, and then that's on the left-hand side of this screen, or this slide, go through a series of steps related to setting self-management goals, motivational interviewing, following up, and finding ways to help sustain changes, healthy behavior change. We ran into problems with that though, because 5 visits is a long time, and we had a lot of visits, and we really had no good way to get paid for that. There are ways, but they're difficult. Once Mackenzie became a registered nurse, we decided to move to the so-called augmented visit, and that really became quite successful. The augmented visit, as we defined it, would be, or designed it, would be similar to what would happen in a Passport to Health visit, with emphasis on working with patients to understand how to be better self-managers, establish behavior change goals, and through motivational interviewing. But it would be part of a chronic disease visit. Most of the patients we've had have been diabetics. That visit would be scheduled as a visit both with the care coordinator and with the provider, so that the care coordinator would see the patient first, and then the provider would see the patient after that. When it works well. The difficulty that we've had is scheduling, making sure that the care coordinator is there, obviously the provider is there, and then the patient is there as well, and being able to have enough availability. And in an independent small practice, that has been a problem. We haven't achieved this yet, but our plans have been to train at least 1 and maybe 2 of the MAs to be health coaches under the supervision of the care coordinator. And I'm anticipating that to be a really helpful way to be able to continue these augmented visits and continue that care without having to necessarily depend on a full-time care coordinator. Right now, it would be very expensive for us. The way we're paying for this is to upcode. A normal diabetic visit would be billed as a 99214. When there's augmented visits, we bill it as a 99215. That's so far not caused any troubles or led to any issues, partly because we are very good at documenting. This is our electronic health record and a self-management template. And this is de-identified, and you probably will not read the notes there, but this is the kind of note that would come from an augmented visit, where our care coordinator would see the patient for the first half hour. I'd have access to these notes to be able to review and support what happened in that visit and do the other steps in care for the rest of the visit. One of the things that we were concerned about in all this is, would we be having too many 99215s, and would that end up leading to audit? Has not, and through confidential sources, we were given a reasonable idea that it would take at least 70% of your visits to be 99214s and 215s to risk audit, and we haven't gotten anywhere close to that at this point. So again, a program that we want to continue to expand with the enhanced reimbursement to support care coordinator and health coach positions. So ultimately, one of the things that I was realizing as we were taking on that risk with this innovation was that risk is part of all this. I mean, from the beginning with medical home transformation, we've really ended up taking risks, cost, and others. But risk ultimately is necessary for success. And what I've found repeatedly in this process is those successes bring me a lot more joy in my work as a physician. I appreciate Judy's help hugely in that because she's been critical, and my entire team. And so we'll look forward to that continuing. And Judy's now going to speak a little bit about another really successful innovation, I think, the 3MA2 provider model.
Oh, she'll let us know. She said she would let me know.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to be here today and to represent management in a very small office. Oops, is that going backwards or forward?
Press down.
That's going backwards. Okay. Here we are. What any of us who have been part of the patient-centered medical home movement have come to realize is that there are so many standards, so many changes, so much work to implement this in offices that you can often get lost in the forest and start to become stressed about the whole change process that's going on. And so one day I was driving to a meeting up at a Vista hospital, and there's a place on McCaslin Boulevard, if any of you have been there, that is up on a high hill, and it looks down over a very deep valley. And that particular morning, there was a fog bank just like that was covering the houses in the lower valley. And it inspired me. It gave me a thought. I thought to myself, if I were living in a house underneath that fog bank, what would I see when I walked out the door in the morning? It would be dark and damp and not a pleasant day. But if you're up on the hill looking down and you're in the sunshine, you see the day very differently. It's a beautiful day and the sun is out. So how can we enjoy the experience of process and change and all of the hard work that's involved in making practices change their culture? So I like to think of it as juggling. There's a lot of things, a lot of balls to keep in the air, and you often feel like you're going to drop some of those balls, and there's money at stake, so you don't want to drop any of the balls. So we have all of the standards that we're trying to accomplish. We started out with PCMH standards, but now we've got a whole long list of them. We've got meaningful use, we have STARS, we have PQRS, and we want to make sure our RAF score is high and our HCC coding is accurate. And so all of these things put a lot of pressure on a team to be able to accomplish what they have set for their goals. So one of the things that we designed in our office was how to have multiple MAs working with the provider. Now, some people use the scribe, and that's a very similar solution, but this is a little different than using a scribe. So I actually got this idea when I went to a PCC conference in Chicago in the fall of 2013. They were talking about how to implement this. And I know Dr. Hofnitz was very pro all of these changes, but I could tell it was putting a lot of stress on him. And so I needed to come up with a way to remove some of that stress. And so we discussed it, and Dr. Hofnitz found a doctor up in Craig that was using a similar model. So he drove all the way to Craig and spent a day with that doctor to find out what he was doing. And we also learned that Rocky Mountain Primary Care was trying to implement something similar. So I went there with our care coordinator, and we spent probably 3 or 4 hours at their practice to see how they were doing it. So after all that research, we came together as a team and we discussed how it could work in our office. So here's what it looks like at Belmar. We have 2 providers in the office 5 days a week. And so we set it up so that we have 1 MA working with 1 provider who's doing check-in. And I think Erin has some handouts. If you would like to start passing out those handouts, she's got the list. We have a checklist that we're using for each of these roles. And so you can actually have a real checklist. But the first MA works with 1 provider. And then we have another MA who does check-in for the 2nd provider. And then the 3rd MA, they do check out. And they do check out for both of the providers. So they're bouncing back and forth between the 2 providers all day long. Now, because of our physical space, and this is something that you have to consider when you're trying to implement something in your office, is that your physical space determines a lot of the details and how it will work. And in our space, all of our MAs are in the same space. They're not separated by distance in any way. So they're all right there together. So it makes it easy for them to communicate. So one of the things that we were told ahead of time, we really didn't believe it until we did our own research, was that this is actually better. You actually have more income by doing this than if you do it the old-fashioned way. So what we discovered, and that print is so small I can't see it from here, so I'll move over here. We discovered that, and we put an average cost of $15,000 for each MA, and so we were seeing more encounters. Our encounters increased by a dramatic amount. And actually, this doesn't even show the most dramatic increase, because the last half of 2014, because this is just from January to June, a comparison of all those years, but the last half of 2014, our encounters rose above 4,000. So, and the cost of the extra MA is a static cost. It's not connected to how many encounters. So the more encounters that you see, the more it increases your net income. So this was a pleasant surprise, especially since patient-centered medical home money was going down the tubes, and a lot of things that we had received a large amount of income from in the past were starting to diminish. It was a good change to be able to increase fee-for-service income. And so the way that we make it easy for our staff to accomplish all of these goals, because they have a long list of things that each person has to be responsible for. I don't know how many of you read the book, The Checklist Manifesto. Well, if you haven't read it, you should put it on your reading list. Dr. Hoffitz learned about it and he gave a copy to me, which I was very eager to read. And what's really especially nice about it is it's written in the medical setting, so it's very pertinent to medical situations. And so what we did was we created checklists for every role in the office, and especially it was necessary because of splitting up the check-in responsibilities from the check-out responsibilities. It was important that they had clear understanding of what it was they were expected to do, what was their piece. And of course, we had them work with us to design these lists. Once we got the list established, it helps with training and many things. After they've done it for a while, they don't have to actually look at the list, but it helps to be intentional and not to miss things. So even the providers had checklists, and this was partly necessary because every time we add a new standard that we have to follow, it changes your whole workflow. There are certain things that you have to remember that if you go into automatic overdrive, you're going to forget it because it's different than it was last month, but it's extremely important. So we made a provider checklist as well as one for both of the MA roles. The other thing is it's important to have your team meetings because whenever there are so many things that can change what's necessary to be done. It might be the standards that change, but it might be other circumstances that change. And so you constantly have to reevaluate and look at what you're doing and decide if it's working. And the only way you can do that is to have regular team meetings. We have a staff meeting once a month, and that includes everybody. We have a specific provider meeting that's just the providers, and that's once a month. And we have an MA meeting that's just for the MAs, and we also have a front desk meeting. So we get a lot of feedback from them and problem solve and do things to help improve the process. And one of the difficult tasks that we had was to get to the meaningful use standard for patient portal enrollment. We have a portal in our electronic record, but it would have to be 50%, and that's a huge number. And so we weren't getting there as quick as we needed to, so we got the whole team together and we said, how can we accomplish this? Because everybody already has their tasks and their jobs, and they didn't, any of them, feel like they had time to deal with this patient enrollment. So we got the team together and we came up with ideas, and we also came up with a way to celebrate our success if we were to reach our goal. So we gave them some choices of some things that they might enjoy doing that would be motivating. And the final outcome was we decided that we would go to a baseball game together. And it was the best attendance by the staff that we'd had for any social event that we'd ever had. And I believe it's because it represented the success that they were a part of. And so it made them not want to miss their reward. So they were all there. And so we celebrated because we did reach our 50% mark and have superseded that since then. So you have to make your goals specific. You have to involve the team in deciding what it is that they want to do for their reward, because you want it to be something that's motivating. We had narrowed it down to two things, a baseball game or bowling. They like both, but it was the only time we had ever gone to a baseball game together, so it was a very special occasion. So this is a picture of Dr. Hopkins receiving our first Meaningful Use Award. And so it always is such a great feeling when you're successful in reaching your goals, but I strongly encourage you to take the checklist that they have passed out, and you'll have to customize it for your own situation, but a checklist is so helpful. And this is the most recent version that we were using, but to be honest with you, we have to now, we have to change it for the next meaningful use stage. And I'm actually planning to put, you'll notice that it's highlighted in yellow for the core standards and the menu things for meaningful use. What I'm planning to do on my next checklist is to mark next to each item which of the standards it meets. So if it's PQRS, there might be some of them that meet 3 or 4 different standards. But I want to do that to help the staff understand that there's multiple reasons why we do all of the things that we do. So hopefully that was helpful, and do we have time for questions?
Do you have the receptionist responsibilities?
You want to come up for the questions? What was the question?
But I received check-in, check-out, and provider. Do you have the receptionist for me?
Oh, thank you for, I noticed that I didn't include that one. If you would like one, I could send it to Erin and maybe she could send it, or I'm not sure how we can get that to you, but maybe you could leave me your email address, because we did not include the checklist for the receptionist. Oh, okay, yes.
One question I had was, I saw huddles listed on the meeting page earlier. You did mention that. How do you guys work your huddles?
And if you could both repeat the questions after you get them for the folks on the webinar, that'd be great.
The huddles was the first thing we ever did, really, as we started our journey. And it was before I even really heard of medical home. So we've been doing that for, I think we started just when you started, Judy. So it's been since about 2006, early. I've read about it somewhere, but it just made lots of sense. There's lots of ways to do huddles. We've always done it more or less this way, and that is we have our team, and we get together in the morning just before we start seeing patients. I'm there, or one of the providers typically runs it. That could either be myself, the nurse practitioner, or the other physician. We have every staff who happens to be there. We have some staggered times in terms of when people come in, so we have to expect other members of the team to pass on issues that were discussed in the huddle to those people. We have a patient schedule. We have a hospital log. We do pre-visit planning based upon the patient schedule. We have a hospital log to do transition management for all of our patients who are in facilities, hospitals, and skilled nursing facilities. And then we manage some of the other logistical stuff that comes up in an office, health information systems and scheduling changes and problems from the previous day that need to be reviewed for solution, that kind of thing. It's my strong feeling that the huddle, if you're not in a team that's doing that now, that's the first thing. I say it's not that hard. We started slow, and it was fundamental, and we've allowed this to progress, and it's become a pretty sophisticated meeting. But that's in 5 years. But it really is a great way to help start the whole process of culture transformation with team interaction as a fundamental part of that.
Any other questions? Okay, I think we're ready to move to the next.
Thank you very much. So our next speaker is pretty much the poster child for patient-centered medical home. And I have a long list of things I can tell you about Dr. Hamlin. I'm going to let him speak of these things mostly by himself. He is Associate Clinical Professor for the Department of Family Medicine at University of Colorado. He was the 2011 Family Practice Physician of the Year. He works in a practice that was a patient-centered medical home best practice in 2010 and was also in the pilot project with Health Teamwork. So he has a plethora of experience, and he's going to share some of that with you.
Well, I have been told I am childish, so I guess poster child is the best way to put it. Maybe it's temper tantrums I throw. Okay. Well, is that better? Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
You're all on teams already. And whether they're good teams or bad teams or efficient teams or non-efficient, depends. So we're talking about advanced team care and how Westminster Medical Clinic, and I think I can speak for Belmar and Miramont, do advanced team care, because it is an evolution. Now, my objectives today are really to try to get from my head into your head what our vision of advanced team care is, and then how to build it. So we'll talk a little bit about some of the processes and the we did to get to where we are. I use this slide a lot for patient-centered mental home talks, because when you talk to somebody, even though you may hear my words, what you understand isn't always what I say. And so, but that is really the start of a team, isn't it? That's where you share the vision. And everybody who's talked to you today had a vision, and somehow they were able to share it with their team. And that's how you build a team. So our mission statement at Westminster is that we constantly evolve to promote quality, safe, coordinated, whole person care. Our healthcare team partners with patients to foster health and well-being with evidence-based medicine, health education, and patient engagement. Real standard stuff. But what's important about this quote is I didn't make it. This was the staff created our mission. And that, again, was the start of how you build a team. It's a whole practice. Now, again, some depends on the size of your organization, but essentially you're one team. That's the organization, and then you're smaller teams within that team, and that's really where it starts. So healthcare reform is, well, it's be careful what you wish for, and where we end up, who knows? But I would say that somebody has to do something, and it's just incredibly pathetic that it has to be us. It is us. And why is that? And because at least, we've been doing this stuff for about 10 years in the reform world now. And you have a fragmented healthcare system, and all that I see is that you have a fragmented repair system trying to fix it. So the only people who really know healthcare is in this room and listening on this webinar. We know healthcare. I mean, I think a lot of people may know disease care, but when it comes to providing health, it's you guys that do this. It's really up to us. We don't have the resources, perhaps, maybe we don't have the training, but you have the heart, the soul, the desire, the caring to make it happen. It really is on our shoulders. So primary care is a team sport. And so, what's a perfect team? Well, these two guys on the right, you may know them. That's Bob Greasy and Don Shula from the 72 Dolphins. I'm from Miami, so I can talk about this. And they're Hall of Famers. Who's that guy on the left? That's Earl Morrall. He's a 38-year-old backup has-been quarterback. And who are these guys? And these are the defense. And they call them the no-name defense because there were no stars. But by the end of the season, they were #1 defense in the league. In the 5th game, Greasy broke his ankle, carted out, and Earl Morrall trotted in, and he won the next 9 games. What backup quarterback wins 9 games in a row? Greasy comes back in the playoffs, and they go 17-0, and they have a perfect season. #1 offense, #1 defense. Now, I think that demonstrates probably the coaching, the leadership on how to make a team work with not necessarily all stars. Okay. So it's naive to bring together a highly diverse group of people and expect that by calling them a team, they will in fact behave as a team. It is ironic indeed to realize that a football team spends 40 hours a week practicing teamwork, for the 2 hours on Sunday afternoon when their work really counts. Teams and organizations seldom spend 2 hours per year practicing when their ability to function as a team counts 40 hours a week. So doctors generally say an ideal team is everybody doing what I tell them to do. Okay, have you heard that before? Surgeons especially. Doesn't go very far. So what's a good medical team? And it's already been defined. Fortunately, we find examples scattered throughout the country where up-to-date science, not shop-worn habit. I'll underscore that. We get stuck in habit all the time. You always have to wonder, why have a good team? That's why. Why am I still doing it this way? Is it because it's easier and I just know how to do it, or is it really good? So is a basis for clinical decisions where learning is constant and purposeful, and where errors are discovered early and prevented. How are errors discovered and prevented? I made a mistake, Doc. Don't take my head off. Okay? Well, their head's going to be taken off. They're not going to tell you they made a mistake. So you have to encourage that kind of communication. Patients are the center of care rather than bystanders. That's nice. On whom medicine is practiced. Professionals and patients work together to decide on a treatment plan, and the medical care is coordinated and integrated to the benefit of each patient. It really is a patient-centered medical home, description. To make it kind of easy to remember, traditional practice, everyone works for the doctor and clinician. In a team-based practice, everyone works for the patient. And again, that's easy to say, but you do have to question everything you do. Just really working for the patient? Is it really patient-centered, or is this really just a workaround for being physician or clinician? Working together is not easy. I've got two, Omar, a strange feeling like we're going in a circus. Well, you can see that the leadership isn't so good. They have their back. Management isn't so good in terms of distributing resources here. And my guess is their mission and where they're heading isn't so good either. Now, there are lots of different types of teams. And you really need to understand where you want to go, because not all, like healthcare is local. I mean, every practice is different, and your environment and the people and the population you serve are going to be different. So what kind of practice do the team that you build, it might depend a little bit on where you're at. But most people, I would say, are stuck in parallel and never getting any further. So you may have a practice with 3, 4, 10 docs, and you have essentially 10 different practices. They're all doing their own thing, and no one's talking to each other. It's like a horse race, and they're all in their own lanes, and they're just going. And so they may be in the same organization, but that's siloed, fragmented care. But maybe one of the docs asks, or the PA asks a doc a question. So, okay, there's a consulting relationship. That person feels comfortable talking to the physician. And it may even be coordinated where you actually are sharing some information on best practice, or you may even be getting into transitional development where you do same-day access or something like that and have to coordinate different departments. And you may even have a behavioral health person in your office, or a chiropractor or something like that, and you actually have a multidisciplinary type of team. Okay, that may or may not be coordinated. And then, of course, the nirvana of it all is where you have integrated collaborative care, where you have really, it's not that you don't have a leader, but you share the direction, you share the leadership, you listen, and the team moves together and not pushed by the leader. So basically, as you think about this, you need to define your team, and then you need to develop a model and figure out how you want to integrate that team. Creating teams is not easy. Okay? It's not, it's actually extremely, extremely difficult. And so for our practice, and I'll outline, I'll come back to this, we use in a lot of ways John Cotter's book, Leading Change, K-O-T-T-E-R, and I'll go through his 8 principles in a moment. But basically, we started out with a guiding coalition where you have 3 to 4 people who really, have that vision, and you work together. You have a practice team, which in our case is all the staff. And so when we started out with patient-centered medical home, we did standard 1 access and communications policy, the whole staff did it together. And that's how we launched into our journey into becoming a patient-centered medical home. And then we broke it up into different teams and stuff like that. But you really do have to create that. We're all in it together. And that was one way we did it. But then everyone has to have their voice. And so you have to have transformational focus groups. And so you need the front desk representative, the billing people representative, the back office representative, in some form so that everyone's voice is heard. And then you move into the team-led concept, which is from Tom Bodenheimer, University of California, San Francisco. We came up with that some years ago, which is really the core team of practical delivering the care. And that could be a physician and an NP or a PA and an MA. And then you have support people with them. So that's the core of the team, and then within this larger team. The care team, of course, requires that these are the things that we've just learned along the way, and that really count, is that everybody on that team knows what the goals are. And don't expect that just because you've said it once or you've demonstrated that people really know what the goals are. I mean, it have to be over and over again, making sure people are clear on what you're doing, what their roles are, and how, and building good team meetings. We'll talk about that a little bit. And again, teams are all about relationships. And unless you really put effort into building trust and respect and good feedback, not criticism, you're probably not going to get to where you want to go. And that takes some degree of study and practice in itself. Then there's a born leader. Now I'm talking opposite. Maybe we're reluctant leaders. Okay, these are not natural to us, and I study leadership a lot to try to help drive our practice. So again, team structure. We developed this team-up concept, and then but it's the culture that really counts. And each practice has a very different culture. And that's a really hard term to relate and to share. And I don't think I necessarily have a real good grip on it right yet, but what is the culture of your practice? Do people come in happy to go to work? Do they come in, really wanting to be part of a team that takes care of patients? They just want to go home? They just want to put in their hours and get out of there? I mean, what is the culture? They're just coming in to stamp their time card, or do they stay extra hours and make sure people get the care that they need? What is the culture of your group? How do you change that? Do they even, people, there are little cliques within the practice, and that group stays over there, that group does this thing, and it's not my job over here, or is it that everybody feels committed and responsible to the patient and works together? So how do you get that culture shifted? And some of the ways that you do it is you really got to move from co-location to integration. Co-location is just kind of a body doing your own thing there versus really working together with your colleagues. Standardization, I think that's really important. You have to standardize the care that you provide for a couple of reasons. One, it's, the leader, whoever that happens to be, needs to come up with, well, these are the guidelines that we consider to be good for this practice. But also, it's a way of building a team when you work together and what those guidelines should be, or how you choose to deliver care for diabetes or hypertension and COPD. And so having standing orders, whether it's for the MAs or even for the physicians and clinicians, is very important. Workflow mapping, all that type of stuff, training, cross-training, setting up ground rules on how to relate to each other, what's appropriate, what's not appropriate. That's kind of how you change culture. And then communicating, which is just huge, how you, talk to each other and how you encourage talk. So this is just a nice little, mnemonic kind of thing, forming, storming, norming, and performing. And, it's actually good to keep in your head. It's only 4 things. And sometimes, because you'll go back and forth. Sometimes you're forming a team, and sometimes you're really performing, and then you're storming again. And where are you? Because you really need to think that out to get that to get back to the ultimate, which is performing. So with forming, it's where you begin. That's the start. And you sit together and start talking, and everyone listens to the talk politely, and no one says anything that's really dull. And you're trying to share that vision, and you're trying to build trust. That's what it's all about. So do these people want to stay on this team? Do you want to contribute to this team? That's important. So you're really setting this foundation for the team right then there. It takes some perseverance, because it doesn't happen in 1 meeting or 2 meetings or 3 meetings. I mean, this is a long time to build trust and to develop that those ground rules that I was talking about. So meetings, none of us is as dumb as all of us. We've been through lots of types of meeting agendas and trying to form teams, and meetings can be great, but most of them are lousy and worthless. Okay. So, and but they're so essential to team performance that they deserve a lot of attention. So you have to have a good team leader, and you have to establish ground rules of what's allowed and not allowed, and you have to be punctual, start on time, and respect people's time. You have to stay focused, which is a real problem. You got to keep other people focused from rambling and whatnot. You have to make sure there's an agenda. You have to make sure everyone's opinion is heard. And getting our staff to talk at meetings, that took about 6 months just to get our MAs to be able to express their opinions without, shaking. And there are ways to do that that, makes it safe for them. Meetings, you shouldn't have a meeting to talk about things. You should have a meeting to do things. And so there should really be actionable. And if you have something on the meeting that's informational, not actionable, it probably should have been delivered by email or by a paper or something like that. So your meeting should be, what are we going to do to make something happen and work? Okay? So they should have really smart, specific, measurable, actionable, realistic, timely kind of things that you're talking about in the meeting. So you walk out with something to do. And then you need to keep minutes. Now, we've been through a huge number of different, almost a dozen different types of formats and agendas and over the years. And now we're down to the PEP agenda, which stands for Policy, Education, and Patient Care Case Presentations. And so we're a pretty good functioning team, although we're storming right now. But we have a new person come in, so we're back to storming, getting to know each other. But, so policy, what's really important, something you really need to know, and then education, we may go over a template on UTI or something that we just built or something and get the feedback or, because most of it now is really on patient care. And we spend most of the time just going over, patients from a team point of view and everyone's perspective and getting on board like the case management that nursing world has been doing forever. But that's basically where our agendas are at right now. But it takes time to get there. Storming, of course, yes, there's, we have personalities. We have to deal with those personalities. And there are power struggles, and there are people with their own agendas and self-interest and whatnot, and that conflict needs to be resolved. And, that happens. So it needs to be discussed and brought out and dealt with. Change is the issue, and when the winds of change blow hard enough, the most trivial of things can turn into deadly projectiles. So even small change is dangerous. Now, change is an interesting subject too, and I think most people find it safe and easy to do developmental change. And that's where, okay, I need to learn how to just new drug, I need to learn how to dispense it, or I need to learn this new procedure, how am I going to do this? So it's all about me, about learning a new skill. Transitional change is a little more involved, where you actually have to involve another person. So maybe that's putting in same-day access. You have to talk to the front desk because it might be a good idea if they're doing the scheduling that you talk to them about how this is going to work. And that gets into a kind of a real defined type of change where you're just dealing with a very specific item in a few people. Transformational change is a whole different ball of wax, and that's where you're really changing culture. That's where you're really bringing up teams. That's where you, like you tell your diabetic patient who comes in, when they walk on your feet, they're going to be walking on their hands after all the behavioral change they need to make. Okay? That's transformational change. Change your life. Change the way you live. And that same thing happens in your practice. Change the way you operate in your office. Okay? It's a whole different way of doing things. Doctors got to give up responsibility and have other people do things. Okay? And MAs have to start, really working to the top of their license and doing things they never dreamt they would be doing. Okay? That's transformational change. I told you your idea of wheels on a cart was unworkable. So the good news is that you really don't have to reinvent the wheel. It's just redesigning the wheel. And we practice a lot of workarounds to make it happen financially. Norming is, again, where you probably are most of the time, where you're you basically have respect, people are listening, you're contributing ideas, they're taking some responsibility and accountability for the things they're supposed to be doing. You're actually getting some work done, you're becoming more efficient, more effective, life's getting better, you're getting home more on time, and you're less stressed out. How do you do that? Again, huddles. And huddles are interesting. I started huddles a long time ago, and I thought, oh, I read about it. And I said, this sounds like a great idea. I should talk to my MA before seeing patients. And I told my other docs in the office, and I said, we should all huddle. No one wanted to do this. So I said, okay, I'll just do it with my MA. And we started huddling in the morning, and I kept on telling people, hey, this is great. I really want to do this. I don't understand the resistance of doing something so simple and something so effective. But it took about a year. And finally, the doc said, why are you getting out on time? And why are you less stressed? And why are you smiling and laughing? I said, huddle. Okay. And then I learned, well, there's more than just huddling in the morning. And there's huddling are just like sort of impromptu team meetings. And we have, I'll just go through this quickly. Let's go back. So huddles, again, it depends on your practice. Now, Dr. Hoff's, I think, huddles with his whole practice in the morning. I just huddle with my nurse. So it really depends on the practice, what you want to get across, what the needs are, what works for that practice, how often you do it. So there's different types of huddles. And so our practice has now gotten, we say, okay, let's put this on paper. So we have structured huddles and unstructured huddles. So the structured huddles, like every morning, 15 minutes before practice starts, patients come in, I huddle with my nurse. But there's also those team huddles once a month. We used to do them once a week, but financially you can't afford that, so we have to go down. But that's where we actually do case presentations, and anybody in the MA brings in patients to talk about all the time. I'm having a problem with this patient, they give me the EBGs, or I walk out shaking every time. What can I do? So we talk about that. So anyone can bring in a case. We do physician referrals, and where we have an NP and 2 PAs in our practice, and then they can, if they're having they can send the patient to be seen by the physician who's complex, or they're having problems with it, they send us a little e-message about what's going on, so we're prepared. So it's technically a huddle. Medical management, I won't get into that. That's something new that we're sort of doing in terms of developing shared care content. And unstructured huddles. Well, that's what happens where, like yesterday, PA grabs me, and this person's got, superior vena cava syndrome, and it's abnormal CT scan, and what's going on, and well, they got fibrosing mediastinitis. I never seen that in my life. But they do, and what to do. And so, that we took care of it right then and there. That was an interruption. That was a necessary thing. They also can just send us actions through the email, and they just say, here's a lab test, I'm not sure what to do, what the next steps are. That gives me an opportunity to get into the chart, look at the patient, and then get back to them. So that's all about the electronic huddle. And then we do our Bumblebee huddles, and we have a Skype chat, and they can just Skype me saying, I need help in room 3, and I say, I'll be there in 5 minutes. And I just pop in, and they do a case presentation, and I pop out. And that's sort of a provide, that's almost like a patient huddle with the providers. So finally, you try to get to performing. You get there a brief period of time. It doesn't last long, and you drop down to norming or storming. But that's where you're really talking and listening to each other, active listening, and you're sharing decisions, and there's lots of actions, and people come up with ideas, and they're all trusting, and you deal with your conflicts, and you have shared goals, and people are really accountable and responsible, and it's really wonderful when you're there. So what does integrated team care look like at Westminster? So you live this stuff. Most people live this stuff right now. I would imagine you can relate. 55-year-old, you've already seen 20 people. It's the afternoon. We're running late. Haven't been able to get to the bathroom yet. And 55-year-old patient with diabetes comes in for refills. Hasn't been seen for 9 months, but they're really. Their agenda is that they're dizzy, they got a rash, and their knee hurts, and your agenda is you got to take care of their diabetes. And they haven't had labs for a year, and who knows what their medicines are on. And Who knows when your retinal exam was done? And so what do? I mean, you got 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, you know, evaluate their dizziness, and look at their rash, and discuss their arthritis, order some labs, and give them their medications, but there's no time for education, and there's no time to do a foot exam, and who knows when you're going to see the person back. That's American healthcare, I think. So with planned care, team care, you know, it's afternoon, seeing about 14 people, you have time. Your patient comes in, they were seen for the diabetes 3 months ago because you do population management, and you know, you get them in. They know the policies, and so they were dizzy last week, so they came in already and had their rash and knee looked at. Now they're coming back for the diabetes exam. Their labs and methods are up to date because the MA has already checked that out last visit and made sure everything was done. The MA is looking for they had the eye exam, and the MA is calling the ophthalmologist to get the report in the chart, so NCQA would be very happy with you. And they already had their foot exam done by the MA, and they already had health coaching done by our health coach for about 20, 30 minutes on carbohydrates. And now I can walk in, and I can review the labs. Well, first of all, so if I had dizziness, we go away. We can address our previous problems quickly, review the labs, talk about the medications. We already had education done. I support and emphasize what the health coach already told them. I said, yeah, I think walking for 20 minutes on Mondays and Fridays is a good idea. And yeah, when it's snowing, you can go to the mall. It's great, perfect. Okay, I'm done with my education. I've pre-planned their next labs, and they're going to see the NP in about 3 months. And so we'll go about 2 months whenever you decide. It can't be. That's really what happens in our practice. Okay? It's actually nice. And you really feel, when you walk out of the room, that you've done something good for the patient, and you're not stressed out. So steps to building a team: find your vision, and then learn the skills. So that does take a little time. And again, I recommend John Cotter's book, because this is all about change, whether it's changing your practice, changing yourself, changing teams. It is all about change. Create your guiding coalition. Find people that share the similar ideas. In bigger practices, there may not be very many people, and who really want to make this change. They're very happy with what's out the status quo. So you won't find many people who really want to change. Yeah, communicate your vision and share your vision, and we use the patient-centered medical home as sort of our kind of common ground. And of course, everyone wanted to give good quality. Establish your goals, and again, we did that through the access policy, having everybody kind of work together, create your teams, spread the teamlets, and then you measure. This is another way of looking at it. You develop your vision, and we use the patient-centered medical home as sort of the concrete, something you can get your hands on. You have to work with the willing. Not everybody is willing, and yes, we have had doctors leave, MAs leave, and sometimes asked to leave, sometimes they voluntarily left because they just didn't like this program or didn't get it. So you have to learn your skills, you got to build your teams, communicate, share your vision, and you also have to learn how to manage projects well, because this is what it is, a perpetual project management. You're making these kinds of changes and building teams. So like Judy said, celebrate your wins and build the self-efficacy of your group. There's lots of issues, lots of barriers, and a lot of times it feels like a workaround because you don't have the resources to do this easily. But you have to have the physical space to do it. So what can you do? You have to have the mental space. You have to have the breathing room to be able to start something as really big as this is. And you have to learn how to communicate. You got to communicate at all levels to the whole group, people individually. And then how do you make these connections? They can be personal, one handoff, it's going to be electronic. We can do these by schedule things. Get the uniformity, get standardization through templates, through education, through shared care plans, through building skills, and then work on the cultural aspects of your practice and really, why are you there? What kind of healthcare? We're so bound up in what other people are trying to tell us what to do. And they're trying to tell us what to do in terms of how their healthcare system works from an operational point of view. But I venture to say that most everyone here is a relational type of practitioner. Okay? And don't forget that you're building relationships with your staff, you're building relationships with your patients. And don't get hung up on the measures and the PQRS and the NCQA stuff, because those are operational aspects of how to build, it doesn't tell you how to, they're not relational. And that's what taking care of people is all about. So what is your culture in your practice? For us, it's all about relationships. Keeping this going is tough. And how do you keep people? And so this is what we think about. Number one, you got to provide the people autonomy and equanimity. You have to treat people fairly and as equals if you're going to work together as a team. You have to give them some ability to think for themselves, whether they're MAs or MPs or no matter, and not, fear for their jobs if they have to think wrong. You just have to be taught something different if they think wrong. You got to minimize the bureaucracy and try to, immunize your staff against these needless, wasteful, nonsense things that we have to do, or at least share that burden equally, so that you all are in it together. You have to get people become masters of their job and give them the resources and the skills, and perpetually work on that to help them become better and better and better. And our MAs work at really high levels because we've given those resources and support. And you got to give them purpose. And sometimes my purpose for being at the practice might be different. And you have to ask them, well, why are you here? Why do you put up with this really crazy world? We even asked our staff, what is your purpose for being here? And it really is different for all of them. And so, and then you need to know that, and you need to support that, and you need to remember that, and to nurture that. Well, that's great. That keeps people motivated, and it keeps people enthusiastic, but you still need money to keep them there. And payment reform still is not here. It is a little difficult, and I have no answers for that. And on that. So is this sustainable? I don't think it's sustainable, frankly, unless there is payment reform. And how long you can keep it sustainable, I don't know. We'll see what happens. So this is from Bodenheimer, and this is really, for us, is where we're trying to head with our team care. So we're going to, here we have different columns of the doc and then the MA, RN, nurse practitioner. So what do? We help them in the morning, okay. And then the doc does the me visits and phone visits and sees a complex patient while the MA is doing population management on the phone, making sure those diabetics are in, where the RN is calling the post-hospital patients and the hospice patients and doing care and management, where the nurse practitioner and her MA are doing acute and chronic patients. And then you huddle again, mid-morning, and then you, and the MA is starting to do her blood pressure clinic because she's been taught how to do that. And remove a lot of the burden off the top for some routine cases. And then you start seeing some more complex people really working to my license, which is complex polypharmacy kind of stuff. And letting my MAs and BAs and NPs dealing with chronic care and acute care and things that really work for them. This morning, you've seen 30 people in 3 hours instead of 1 or 2 people, just charging through one after another. So you really brought using some technology to make life a little easier and advancing the skills of your staff to take off some of the burden of things that are really something that they can take care of. So I'll leave you with this thought that a vision without task is but a dream, and a task without a vision is drudgery. A vision and a task is the hope of the world, but not people. Oh, questions? Sure.
What are e-visits? Might be a stupid question, but what do you consider an e-visit?
Okay, what do I consider an e-visit? So what I was referring to in the huddles was that my PA may have frequently they get lab tests back, they're not sure what to do, they'll email me or through our EHR an action. It's called new action. So it will pop up and says, this is, Jones has this, and she gives me a little scenario. What do I do next? And I'll look at the chart, and then either I'll talk to her personally or email her back through the EHR, what my thoughts are. So that's sort of an e-communication. We are doing I did my first telehealth consult with the patient last week, actually. So we are moving into e-visits where so much of what I do, I don't need to examine the patient. Why do they need to be in the office? And so it happened to be this person was a 15-year-old kid who had agoraphobia, severe panic attacks. Like, maybe I should just see you at home, okay? Because bringing it to the office is incredibly traumatic right now. And so I did e-visit with him at home. Charged $45, and he was really quite happy to pay that. His mom was, because she's the one who had to bring him. And we offer that now, and we're trying to expand that. That's sort of the future. But it was mostly, we do a lot of electronic inter-office communication, and that's what I meant.
The IHI conference, they were talking about actually billable electronic visits, and it's within a certain parameter and certain disease processes. Have you actually been able to, or has anyone been able to figure out what that billing process looks like and what those set of disease processes that you can deal with electronically with a patient?
Well, the question is, are there billing codes, and can you bill for this and have insurance companies pay for it? And I've been doing this a long time. There's lots of codes, but they don't get paid for. And so there are codes, and there's a whole new. This telemedicine stuff is really in its infancy. They're still working out some legalities of it. Is it paid for? I have. Anthem used to pay for televisits, $35 or something, and didn't have much restrictions. That was a number of years ago, 5 or 6 years ago. I think they still, they still, but I never had patients that really wanted to do it back then. And now, as my access gets down, it's easier. That patient I mentioned was 7 p.m. at night. And so now my access, because I'm not working as full hours, is a little harder. People may find it more useful. So we're trying it again. But we failed at telemedicine about 5 years ago, twice. It's not paid for. That's really, and then if it gets paid for, does it really cover your costs? No. So I think it's going to be a patient burden right now.
Dr. Hammond? John Bachman from Mayo Clinic has done a lot of research on e-visits. It's B-A-C-H-M-A-N. If you Google him, you'll see all sorts of research around this. A lot of the people that have been successful with e-visits actually don't bill insurance. They bill a flat rate to patients, like $30 or whatever, and they actually pay when they are receiving the e-visit. They have a credit card type of thing. So there is research done on it. As Dr. Hammond alluded to, most of it is not done through insurance companies. It's done direct bill to patients for that convenience. Others charge a membership fee. There's different ways of doing it, but most that I've heard that are successful aren't dealing with insurance.
So from the audience, Dr. Bachman in Mayo Clinic has done a lot of research on this e-visits and how they do things, and they charge as a fixed fee, which actually we were doing too. We were looking at doing some personal health care plans where we were offering people for a set amount that they're going to be getting some services that are not covered by health care, but might be really convenient for them. And in that, it's going to be, so many e-visits a year for X amount. Any other questions? Yeah. Yes, the question is, do we use a RN for our care coordinator? And the answer is yes, we have, actually, our NP is about, we hired her about 6 months ago, and part of that was to share duties with the care coordinator, duties with our RN. So the RN actually works with me part-time as sort of my assistant, and then she does care coordination runs the office, all that, you know, make sure all the supplies and stuff are done. And then the nurse practitioner is also helping with, you know, especially where people need to come in and have some care coordination in the office where we can get reimbursed for it. Right now, is that our team lead is a question, and the NP is actually part of my team lead, but so she's sort of a, she's a shared, we share her, she has her own, she's on two teams essentially, and does care coordination. So the way we worked it out is that it's, she just has a lot of irons in the fire right now. She's not team lead.
One, you mentioned this very important concept, learning how to share leadership over and over like achieve that.
So how do we learn, especially as an old dog, how to learn new tricks and share leadership? It's intellectually painful, it really is. You can do this. I think that the sharing leadership, it's interesting. It's got to be very subtle and gentle, and in some ways passive. At least that's how I went about it. So because people get so threatened if they don't feel prepared to be a leader, and so you have to say, well, assess number one, what is their leadership potential, and do they have it? And if, you know, what part, everyone has some degree of leadership. You know, being a mom is a leader, okay? So, you know, our MAs who have limited secondary education, you know, don't think they can be leaders, but they can be leaders. So, you know, what's their strong point, and what do they like? And then try to, you know, give them assignments and that are really easy or simple so they can be successful. So it's a matter of building their self-efficacy of what they can do, giving them ability, helping them with expressing themselves and what they think in their opinion. So in meetings, we would give people assignments to come back. Everyone had to come back and report on something. And then giving them, you know, asking before the meeting, okay, what are you report on? What are you going to say? And help them learn how to, you know, to verbalize in a group. So they did a project that I knew they could succeed at. They were given the help and the tools to make it happen. You know, we helped them with how to tell the team about that. And over a long time, I mean, years. I mean, we've been working on team building for years. All of a sudden, they you know, slowly increase their ability to give them more. So leadership is even with the mid-levels, again, giving them assignments, try to find out, number one, what they're interested in. And it's, oh, you're really interested in this type of condition. Okay, can you make a template? So we just actually had everybody come into the standardization thing. So I said, I want templates. So we took the top 10 visits and we categorized them, and like low back pain, rash, diabetes, hypertension. What are the 10 top things that we do? I want a template that we all use for these top 10 things. Okay, now I can make these templates really well, really quick, but I said everyone's going to do 2 templates. Okay, which templates do you want to do? And so one MP said, I want to do abdominal pain, because I criticized her about one of her patients, and now the note didn't document well. So she did that one, and somebody else did URI, and someone else did back pain. And so by giving them that assignment, you are getting, they submit to me their template, and review it, I give it back with some suggestions and whatnot. So I help them understand my critical thinking on how to build a template in terms of that. And then, but they're doing the work. They have to go back and read up to date. They have to read this type of stuff because they know I'm looking at this stuff. And it's going to have to be the way I would see a patient. And then we present it to the group, and then the group says, well, this is not really how I do it. I do it this way. So then we modify the template to make it workable for all 6 of us, 5 of us. So then that's how we standardize that kind of care. But that's also really making that person a leader too. So.
Well, we were fortunate to have some really experienced speakers here today. And for the next few minutes, rather than have everyone come up and do a formal panel, thought we would just open it up to questions to any of the speakers or any discussion that anyone is interested in having about things that they've done or questions about how to do something. I would just like to comment that evidently I attract really assertive MAs because I've never had a problem with them giving feedback or input. So evidently I just.
Let me add one caveat.
Yes.
With the team meetings, we broke through our barriers and I left the team meetings. And I said, you guys work this out because sometimes some people weren't sympathetic than others. So anyway, I appreciate it. Good luck.
Evidently, I know both. Anyway, does anyone have any questions of any of the speakers or anything that you found really worked well for you that seemed that it just was a breakthrough in an area?
I guess I'd just be interested to hear from anybody who's able, from your own experience after hearing where we've been, to describe something of your fears or concerns or barriers to either starting or continuing to evolve these processes for yourselves and your teams.
Yes.
I think one of the things that I will take back with me is the validation that our journey is not unique. We're having problems with huddles, which I think is like the easiest, let's just do it. So that was very validating to me. And what I liked about all of the presentations was there was a nice combination of sort of the vision of where you need to go as well as pragmatic tools. I love your checklists, and we will adopt those for our use as well. So I thought it was very helpful.
So for any of the speakers, how long did it take you to get from point A to point B, where you are in the performing mode? And is it helpful to your team to see the process as more of an ongoing quality improvement process as opposed to we're going to chop this up and do this as one improvement piece?
Well, for our practice, it took 2 years for us to might consider.
You have to talk for that web.
Yeah, I probably.
For Westminster, I'd say that from the beginning to where I thought that we had developed a team took about 2 years to get a norming situation. I don't think we really got to performing maybe until 3 to 4 years. I mean, really working at it, it takes a long time for us. I'm not quite clear on the second part of that question.
Just to see if it was more helpful for you and your staff to think of it as that ongoing quality improvement process. So when you get to the end of this piece, when you get to the end of, getting to a point where you feel like you are performing, everything's going to, things are always fluid and they're always changing, and thinking of your quality improvement as an ongoing process with no endpoint, really kind of always. Right.
Yeah, and how do we sort of present the change to our staff in terms of an end goal versus a journey? And I'd say yes, it's perpetual change because healthcare changes every month, and medical information doubles every 15 months. So there is no end game. It's always to improve, and you win the Super Bowl 1 year, you have to start over and try to win it again the next year.
Just to sort of reiterate much of what Scott just said, that this is part of the culture, is recognizing that all of these are processes that will never end, but the little successes, identifying those successes along the way, but recognizing that continuing to establish goals, provide opportunities to meet those goals, celebrate those successes, but recognizing that you always have to keep getting better, improving all these aspects of care that are complicated. That's an important part of, that's probably the toughest part of the culture to develop. And I think we're there, but it takes work to keep it there, especially with all the other changes.
I think when we first got involved, we thought that it was a destination. But you realize that it really is a movement that is fluid and it changes on a constant basis. So you have to look at it as an ongoing process and to expect change to constantly be coming, and to realize that figuring out how the process should work is really the most valuable part, because you can fix anything. If you have a team and you have a process that is functioning well, you can face any change that comes along. So I think we had hoped it was a destination, but that's a mirage.
And I'd add, when you have that type of cultural perpetual change, you do risk having change fatigue. And so you do need to, know when to slow down and when to celebrate and when to consolidate your gains for a while, not add new things, and just make sure that they become good habits as opposed to something that we're able to do for a little bit.
I was going to say, I did find it really important that we play once in a while and that we recognize little achievements.
That was what I was going to add. And I think one of the important pieces too is thinking about compassion fatigue, and that as care providers, if we don't care for ourselves and maintain some form of health as a team, then we're not going to be able to serve our patients. And so I think it's very important that the staff understand, first of all, that they're valued, that their opinions are valued, and that they are just as integral as any of the providers are, but that also providers become very fatigued just in caring for patients. And so that's a key component in trying to manage change.
I'm just going to shift gears for 1 second here and say, I know that I emphasize the patient-centered focus, and I am somewhat of a hypocrite in that I am one of those people who absolutely despises the patient panel and that patient advisory board. So I have really had that as a challenge. Now, I love the patients. I have no problem with that. I like their feedback, but the actual arranging of the panel, we have a very impoverished population. I have to get them transportation. I have to feed them. I have to, be dragging them in there. I have to try to engage other people to participate in the process. And I have really struggled with that to the point where I don't. Except that we do, we have started to do interviews, so I can get my residents to do interviews with the patients and get feedback from them about, well, what worked well, what didn't work well, what would you like. But that's an area that I've just really struggled in, and if anybody has been great idea, that would be wonderful.
And I'm not sure I have a great idea, but as you described that, from our group visits, one of the things that might be part of the solution is to identify the star patients, the more outgoing, interactive, energized patients, and they can really help you engage a larger group of patients to meet a function like a patient advisory. If you got to find at least one of those, I think that would really help.
and he's delegating. That's what I call it.
Well, I have to say, I at one time in my life, I agreed with you, and I didn't find much utility to patient advisory committees and the advice that they gave. I thought the patients, couldn't stick onto the question, and they rambled on, and I didn't really get much information, that type of stuff. We did do a health literacy lately, and we did have a small grant and put together another patient advisory committee, very specific recommendations from providers. And, we asked them, okay, how can we make our practice more health literate for patients? What are your suggestions? What, you live here, you're coming here, what would you like? And actually, they came up with really good ideas in terms of, from their patient's perspective, is how our practice could work better to be more health literate for them. And so I have a new respect for patient advisory committees. I think that was a really highly directed. First of all, the patients were picked for people who are engaged patients in their chronic diseases and whatnot, and maybe a different patient population. And they had a real specific task of trying to come up with how does the patient flow work for them, and what are their needs. And they came up with really good ideas that we actually, acted on.
Anyone else? Anything you'd like to say? Okay, well, we're gonna bring the day to a close. I have a couple things to say. First, I just want to let you know that you'll be getting an evaluation form to complete that will come through your email.
At 5 today.
At sometime later today. And I would like to thank the Colorado Nursing Association for participating. And this is Colleen Casper. She'd like to say.
I'm sorry. So I'm Colleen Casper with the Colorado Nurses Association. I want to thank you all for being a part of this inaugural collaborative journey that we're all taking on this journey towards patient-centered medical home care and team-based care. I am just thrilled. So I hope you got at least half of what I did, and I appreciated the overview this morning by the Health TeamWorks folks on the number of opportunities going on in the state, the best practices shared by the family practice physician groups. Thank you for taking the time to be here today to share all of those. What I really like to have reinforced over and over again, that it is, we all lead from whatever position we're in, and it really is a lot about relationships. So long may this continue, and thank you to Raquel Rosen, the Executive Director of the Colorado County Family Practice, for inviting Colorado Nurses Association to be a part of this, and I look forward to more. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Okay, so we're gonna wrap up today. I would just like to thank all of the speakers very much for sharing your day with us and your wisdom and your journey. And I would like to say, I appreciate all of the things that Raquel does for all of us and the other staff that planned this. They are instrumental. We couldn't function without them at all. They're amazing. And just to remind you that people don't remember what we tell them, but they do remember how we make them feel. And we want to make people that we care for feel empowered and engaged, and that they're better off for having participated in the healthcare process with us. So thank you again. Have a safe journey home.
Thank you very much, everyone who stuck with us on the webinar. We know that it was a pretty lengthy time for watching, so we will be distributing a copy of the video to everyone who is registered to listen in. If for some reason you don't get a copy of that video, be sure to reach out. You can speak to Erin, ERIN, at coloradoafp.org, and she will be sure that you get a copy of the recording so you can go back and watch anything that you weren't able to do live today. Thanks so much again.